I know we got a lot to do this afternoon, so I'll call us back to order at this time. Ms. Manager?
Yes, sir. So this afternoon, I'd like to direct you to page 15. And for this agenda item, we're going to have department heads who have capital improvement requests to present those requests to you. And just for information purposes to our department heads, nothing has been removed from the capital request at this point in time. So everything that you're presenting to the board it still remains in the budget. Obviously, we have a big gap, and it won't stay there, a lot of stuff, but we're going to have to figure that out moving forward. But commissioners, we want the department heads to have an opportunity to share with you what their needs are in their areas so that you are fully aware of what the needs are, and we will go from there. So I'd like to first call on Andy Hagee with our Economic Development Department. You get to see him in the morning. He's in federal court today. Thank you.
The 3.5 million that you see is for a 100,000 square foot shell building. This will be the second shell building. Is this how you want me to open up, Chairman?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. This is my first one, remember? Thanks to COVID. Okay. A 100,000 square foot shell building for the NC 97 site, industrial site. I've provided you a site plan. This isn't specifically for the 100,000 square foot shell building, but it will show you the location that we are looking at for this site to locate the 100,000 square foot shell building. And then the other attachments are just some examples of the type of building, not specifically, but to give you an idea of what a tilt, this will be for a tilt-up, a concrete panel building, very similar to the shell buildings that have been constructed in the Whitaker Business and Industry Center, and like the Middlesex shell building, which is a metal building. So that's just wanted to give you some ideas. The third one actually, or the second building, is actually a metal building, but still wanted to give you some idea of what we're looking for on the 3.5 million. The 3.5 million also will accompany a $1 million that was given to us from the state legislature recently, very recent. And so this is what it initiated the addition of a 3.5 for a second shell building. And it was decided that that second shell building would go on the NC 97 site.
Any questions for Andy?
Is this all one shell building, or is it two here?
Two different examples, two different
buildings.
styles, yeah. Yeah.
No, they're just a real one. Those are just two different styles.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, the same building, but just two different sizes?
No, just two different style buildings.
Oh, styles.
One of them is still
Designs.
concrete, Mr.
Yeah.
Bellfield, like we have a gold rock. All of the 5 out there, and the other one is a pre-engineered building in that size. And we are leaning towards doing the tilt-up at 97 because of the appearance. It just started out nice out there at the request of our attorney. And that's a true statement.
Can you get this built for 3.5?
No, this will accompany the 1 million that was we received from the state, which will give us 4.5 million. Now, we recently got an estimate for a 100,000 square foot tilt concrete building at $55 a square foot. But that is just an estimate. But with the 3.5 and then the 1 million from the state, then we have 4.5 million to start with.
I think the important thing we need to remember here is, well, number one, the $1 billion that we got came from Senator Barnes and her appropriation that last week in the budget when they were doing a lot of things. And she was able to get $1 million for economic development for us. But I vision this as more of a loan than a capital improvement, because simply at some point, hopefully about the time we finish it, we will find an industry to go in there. They will pay us what we have in it, is what we have been trying to do. And then we will either decide at that point to roll it and do it again, or we'll put it back in fund balance, whichever thing we do. So it's a little different than most capital requests in the fact that, we do know we'll get the money back in some shape, form, or fashion.
The same what we're doing right now with the
Exact
Middlesex
same
shell
thing
that
we
we
just
closed
did at
on
that
last
meeting.
week, by the
Yeah,
way.
you got an email last week about the one that, Middlesex selling, and what we done chose to do from the board on that one is to roll that one into the next one right beside of it. And it's all about creating jobs and, investments is what it's about.
Yeah, existing buildings for years have always been very important, usually like 80% of a business search for locating into an area. But now, these past couple of years with COVID and the supply chain and the e-commerce and all of that mixed into one, the importance of having available buildings have just like tripled. And they're just beginning to pop up everywhere. And what's out there already, as our shell building has done, are being closed left and right by businesses purchasing the existing buildings as they sit now. But there's a lot, as you can read, there's a lot of new shell buildings and spec buildings that are either under construction or being planned right now, all over the country, not just
Which one
North
of
Carolina.
these are you recommending?
The second one, the second page, the first, second page, first
building.
building.
Yeah. Well, the
To tell you how we did Gold Rock, which is a little different, that opportunity is not available now. We would borrow the money from a bank at that point in time. And we had some period of time in which we didn't have to pay interest, and we tried to sell them before we had to pay any interest. And we were able to do that every time, but the last one we built, and the downturn, we got caught and had to start making payments on that building. That was really the only time we had to do that.
Well, the second one is more attractive. I'm sure the cost more, but it's more attractive.
It is a little more costly.
Any more questions for Andy? All right, thank you, Andy. We'll move on to our next presenter, which is Sandy Vick for our IT department. He doesn't have any. He doesn't, so Board of Elections does not have a request in the upcoming fiscal year, so we're going to be hearing from those department heads who have requests in the upcoming fiscal year. Did you?
We got to take care of the first one you made and get that sidewalk in the next 2 months.
Conversations about it today.
Okay, good.
So this is a handout of the actual slides that you're going to see, just so that you can follow along.
Be careful over there.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Thank you.
Did you get? Okay,
Oh. Jonathan. I'm sorry. You got lights. Mike's got lights.
Okay.
Was the PowerPoint purposeful so you would be in the dark?
I know, now I've got to know how to read my notes. I wasn't thinking about that. And I have to remember to change the slides too. Good afternoon.
Good
Afternoon.
I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my request. I have two CIP items. One is the normal computer replacement money that we request every year. The request is typically $60,000. That's to replace aging computers and laptops. We try to replace every 5 years. We repurpose the ones that we can repurpose, and those that are too old to upgrade, we actually have to replace. And $60,000 does not go very far. The price of laptops and computers has increased a lot in the last year. It takes about $1,200 to replace a desktop, and then you're looking at around $1,800 to replace a laptop now. So any consideration you can give us in that regard would be appreciated.
So the ask is for $60,000.
Yes, sir. And that's the normal request that we make every year for that.
Any questions about the computer replacement?
Okay, that total you're asking for is what, 50?
60. I mean, we'll take whatever we can get, but 60 is what we typically ask for.
Well, what is the backup that you've got on here?
That's next item.
That's what I'm getting ready to
Oh,
talk
okay,
about.
okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions about the computer replacement.
I think we're good, thank you.
Okay, all right. Now, the backup solution that you have a handout on. Our current solution is end of contract in a few months, so now's a good time to be looking at a new backup solution. We recently had 2 very large litigation information requests in the last few months. And trying to pull the information together for those litigation requests brought to light some very serious concerns about our existing backup system. It literally took us over a month to produce the information that we needed for the lawyers for those 2 litigation requests that we had. Given they were asking for large amounts of information, but in a ransomware attack, you have to produce large amounts of information. So that was one thing that sent up red flags to us that said we need to look for another solution that would work better for Nash County. We looked at several solutions, and the WhyRubrik solution that I'm getting ready to present today was the best out of all that we looked at. So the items that we're going to discuss today are WhyRubrik, the difference between WhyRubrik and our existing system, a recent NC state law that was passed in November of 2021 that affects ransomware and recovery. The WhyRubrik provides a ransomware response team. They have Xero Trust data security. We're going to review the Complete Pro package that I'm proposing and a reference from the city of Durham who was hit by ransomware, and they are a customer of WhyRubrik. And then the Microsoft 365 protection that WhyRubrik provides. So why buy anything? Our current solution is multi-tiered. It requires additional infrastructure. It has a legacy approach to security and does not meet crucial cybersecurity needs of modern threats. It's vulnerable to ransomware. It's unable to easily leverage cloud infrastructure for offsite archiving. We do offsite archiving in the cloud, but it's very cumbersome and it's prone to break. There are no insights to the data that we're backing up. One of the things that we'll talk about in a few minutes is the fact that WhyRubrik examines our backed up data looking for avenues of compromise, evidence of compromise. Our current solution does not do that. Much slower recovery and a much larger attack surface. So why WhyRubrik? WhyRubrik is a simple, scalable, cost-effective data protection solution built with lowest attack surface in the data center and ensures recovery from ransomware or natural disaster. It has an immutable file system, meaning that it cannot be changed. It's logically air-gapped, so that the storage solution where our backups are stored cannot be detected on the network. Some of you may recall a few years ago I asked for an air gap system be added to our existing backup system. That was to the tune of like $62,000. WhyRubrik incorporates that automatically. It also provides onboard TOTP, which is timed. You get a password and it times out if you don't use it in a certain amount of time. And it also integrates with multi-factor authentication. There's no shell to the underlying operating system, so there's no shell access, which is an avenue of attack with ransomware. It uses a monotonic clock to reduce susceptibility to NTP. NTP is the network time protocol, and why that's a popular avenue of attack is that if you get NTP poisoning in a ransomware attack, it changes the timestamps on your data and on your backups. The reason for doing that is that your retention policies look for a certain timestamp on that data. If you have NTP poisoning and that timestamp's been changed to something old, it gets rid of your backup. It gets rid of your data. There's also per visibility into files that are compromised at a granular level. So it looks at the files for possible compromise, both at the file system level and at the folder level and at the total data store level. We have fast recovery of the entire VM. VMs are our servers, they're virtual machines, and those are our servers. So you've got fast recovery of the entire VM data set on our WhyRubrik appliance or in the cloud. And it allows for that restoration of that VM in minutes. So why now? There are a number of reasons. Risk mitigation to protect against data loss, reputation loss, and paying the ransom during a ransomware attack. And we'll see in a minute the general statute that was recently enacted in November will address the fact that we can't do that anymore. And it also lowers the complexity and decreases the recovery time. So the immediate impact of implementing WhyRubrik as our backup solution, backup and recovery solution, it hardens backup data against ransomware threat. It improves our RTO, which is the recovery time. Also the RPO, which is the date or the point at which you recover, meaning we don't lose any data. It increases the ability of cloud adoption for data archival, because WhyRubrik is, it works with multiple different cloud solutions. It's very flexible. It preserves our reputation by reducing application downtime due to external or internal threats. It also simplifies the approach to data recovery. All right, so WhyRubrik compared to our current solution. WhyRubrik focuses on protecting the data. It's a natively immutable file system, which means it cannot be changed. There's no direct file system access. It's encrypted, the data is encrypted from beginning to end. Data is not stored in its native format, it's encrypted. Encryption detection, and the WhyRubrik looks at those backups, and it's looking for encryption that's not our own, or any kind of anomaly in that data that would give us evidence of a compromise. It's logically air-gapped, has Xero Trust framework, meaning it has continuous monitoring and validation of credentials and privileges. It's extremely fast on recovering files, folders, databases, or our VMs, our file servers, from either on-prem or our cloud backup. It's unlimited scalability due to the fact that we can put it in the cloud. It's per file visibility into what might be compromised. And it also gives us the ability to restore granularly at the file level or for an entire data store. Our current solution lacks the ability to preserve the file system. It can be changed. There's no ability to detect any kind of anomaly or outside interference or malware, ransomware attack on our backup data. It's very slow and cumbersome for the recovery of the VMs and folders. Now, we use it daily, recovering files, and it does fine. But when it gets beyond that, when you're trying to restore large amounts of data or recover large amounts of data or trying to do an entire VM, then it becomes very cumbersome and slow. The recovery time would be measured in days, weeks, or even months. There's no air gap. It's susceptible to the NTP that we talked about before, where NTP poisoning, where the timestamps can be changed on the data. It consumes our internal infrastructure. There's several different components to manage, making use, protection, and recovery overly complex. The RPO and RTO, meaning the point that you can restore from and the time that it takes to restore, is unpredictable, and it's also not scalable. What we have is what we have. We can't grow with it.
Sandy, what are we paying for the current solution?
The current, like I said, the contract ends in a few months. We paid roughly the same amount of money. I believe it was somewhere in 160-some thousand. Might have been, I think it was less than 170 for the current solution. It was back in 2016, 2017, I think. And I compared the cost of this to the cost of that, and it was roughly about the same amount of money. However, we signed for this for 3 years, and that was for 5. So there is that difference. We can also, just to be perfectly honest and open, we could maintain, even though our contract's ending, we can go to annual maintenance on our existing system for, I believe it's $16,000 per year. So we can maintain our existing system for $16,000 a year.
That, or go to the new system?
Or go to the new
Okay.
system.
I'm lost with your dollars, but you saying you paid 165 up front. What did you pay those 5 years for the current system?
The current system was somewhere in the 160,000 range.
Is
It was
what you
less than
paid.
170.
Is what you paid up front.
Yeah, yes, we paid it up front.
But what did you pay each year of those 5 years? Anything?
No. It
And
paid
this
for
one
the-
is you gonna pay the same thing, and it'll be for 3 years.
Right.
Or you can keep what you got and just keep paying 16,000 per year.
For the next year, it's 16,000. Whether or not they go up, I don't know, but it would be on an annual basis.
Got any idea after 3 years what this other one would cost us
I
just to
do.
keep it?
I do.
Are you gonna get to that?
Well, no, but I can tell you what it is because I anticipated that question.
Sure.
Um,
Well, I'm glad I made you happy then.
I'm glad you did too, because it's probably the only one that I'm going to prepare for. So what they told me was that at the end of the 3 years, we can expect a 7 to 10% increase. We can re-up for another 3 years, and that would be a 7 to 10% increase.
So ongoing, it's gonna be substantially more than what we got then. Cause
That would be my guess.
that,
So a 7 to 10% increase is a significant increase.
but you'd have to pay the whole amount again plus 10% for 3 more years.
I do not, I think they give us an option after the first 3 years where you can do it annually.
Right.
Or you can re-up for 3 years. Now,
Well,
we
to
may
compare
go-
it with the other one, the way you're doing it, which you just said it would cost us $16,000 a year to keep it.
Yes, sir.
So what would this cost us per year to keep it?
That would be, if I understand your question, after 3 years, we pay the 165, 162 now. That would cover us for 3 years.
Right?
And then at that point, we can choose to re-up for 3 years at a 7 to 10% increase.
Oh.
Or we can do annually, which would be the 7 to 10% increase divided by 3. Like, like it would be, you'd split it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
you're
right?
talking about paying from that point on 70,000 a year versus 16,000 a year.
Could
It
be.
sounds like. It,
Could be, it'd be like 60,000 at 10% per year.
okay.
Okay.
This is pretty much
60,000
Swap.
a year.
cost-wise, the first 3 years, for what we currently have?
versus 16.
I'm sorry, say
It is,
again?
cost-wise, this pretty much a swap from what we currently have for the first 3 years.
I'm not certain I would describe it as a swap. It's comparable to what we pay for our existing system, but that system was for 5 years and this one's only for 3. So it's not exactly comparable
Well,
to
what I'm talking about is the first 3 years be comparable to what we're,
what we paid for our existing
Right.
system for 5, right?
But moving forward.
so,
I'm sorry.
so anyway, the first 3 years, so they give you the opportunity, if this is a better system, they give us the opportunity after the 3 years, system changed so much that if we decide that there's a better system, we can go with that. But right now, if we go to this system, we get a better system at the same price for 3 years, pretty much. Well,
Right.
all right.
No. Now, we could keep the system we got for 3 more years for $48,000
Well,
versus this one's gonna cost us $165,000.
but at the same time, what the cost if the system that we presently have fails, and then we gotta pay for recovery and that kind of stuff? So we gotta look at
That's an
the
unknown.
future part of,
Yeah, I
this
understand.
software and all the things that we, have to compromise county government.
I'm with you, sir.
All right.
Sandy, you gave us a copy of this General Statute 143-800. Is our current system in compliance with that?
Nope. I mean, well, it's not a matter of being in compliance with it or not being in compliance with it. What that statute says is that because we're a county entity, we cannot pay ransom to recover, which means that you are dependent upon your backup system to recover from a ransomware attack. Whereas before you had the option to pay the ransom if you wanted to recover quickly, now you don't. So you have to have a backup solution in place that works and that can recover quickly. And that's what WhyRubrik does.
What the people that are smarter than we are did was try to eliminate people asking for ransom by stopping us from being able to pay it.
Right.
Sandy, is there a vulnerability to the county switching from the current solution to the WhyRubrik solution during that period if we do switch over?
There would be no vulnerability. We would maintain our existing system until WhyRubrik was up and running. And we would continue to maintain it. It's hardware that exists in our data center. We would maintain it, keep it until the point that we got to with WhyRubrik where the backups, the data that we were storing on the old system was so old that it didn't matter anymore. WhyRubrik had the most current useful data. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so there would be no downtime either? Right.
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry, does that mean we would have to pay for both systems at the same time until we aged out of the data that's in the current solution?
No, what we could do in that event is, because the current system expires, I believe it's August, we can begin implementing WhyRubrik in July. And then if we needed some extra time on our Avamar data domain backup system, then we could get a month of support in order to carry over. But that equipment, we already purchased that hardware and that software licensing. We already have it. The $16,000 is for support.
So just a quick question. So if you have no backup system now, and you can't pay to recover, then what do?
We
If
have
you
a
can't-
backup system now, and we have data, and we can restore it. However, it would take us quite some time.
Take you longer to
Yes.
recover?
Our downtime for our employees, downtime for our citizens would be significant.
Depending upon the extent of the attack.
Exactly.
Could bear, okay.
Sandy, do you happen to know, I know Rocky Mount had a major issue this past year. What backup system did they have when they had that issue?
I do not know, but I can find out for you.
Okay. They couldn't pay utility bills or anything.
So I will find that out and get back to you.
You can just let Stacy know, she'll email all of
Okay.
it.
Will do. And then the next slide we've already touched on, and that's the statute that went into effect in November of 2021, where we are not allowed to pay ransom now for any kind of a ransomware attack. So again, this means that we are completely dependent upon our backup and recovery solution. So, WhyRubrik also provides a ransomware recovery response team. They provide both remote support and boots on the ground support. So they are on site and they are remote, helping us recover from any kind of a ransomware attack. So if we have an attack by ransomware, WhyRubrik immediately engages their ransomware response team, which is, as an industry leader in data protection and ransomware recovery, they handle every ransomware attack with the highest priority to help facilitate recovery efforts. Their ransomware recovery team's primary operational objective is to collaborate with, assist, and complement our recovery plans and priorities, including partnering with and coordinating with any third-party cybersecurity or technology vendors that we may use. They also provide the highest levels of urgency, ownership, communication, and discretion for the cyber event. All right, so just some discussion on the Xero Trust security that WhyRubrik provides. The retention lock that we already touched on, meaning that any kind of our NTP poisoning, the retention lock remains in place, it can't be touched. And that's where I'm having trouble seeing. It also does the secure local users, meaning that multi-factor authentication that we talked about earlier. You have timed passwords, and you also have multi-factor authentication. Any secure AD logins are secured with MFA. It does the encryption from beginning to end. There's no third-party apps like we're having to use now. And then the file system, as we already touched on, is immutable. So all of that to say that it provides an air gap system, it's immutable, the encryption is there, it has secure logins, the retention locks are there, and then NTP is protected. All that equals it's impenetrable from a ransomware attack. And then down below, there are some certifications that WhyRubrik has. It has the ISO 27001 certification, the SOC 2 Type 2, and their descriptions of what those are down at the bottom. It also has the FIPS validation, which is the U.S. Government Computer Security Standards certification. So what comes with our WhyRubrik Complete Pro package, and that is you get the licensing. There's actually that R6408 is an appliance that resides on our network. You get the immutable file system against ransomware, the Xero Trust architecture, multi-factor authentication, end-to-end encryption. You have cloud out for the cloud archiving where our data is stored in the cloud. We have 3-year license with 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. hardware and software world-class support, the installation, and then the cloud on for quickly producing live VMs in the cloud. Meaning that if we had a natural disaster that took out our server room, we could actually run our servers from the cloud. It also does the radar anomaly and encryption detection. That's what we talked about earlier, where it's looking at our backups for any evidence of compromise. And as I referenced earlier, the city of Durham, you may remember, was hit in March of 2020 with ransomware. It was a significant hit. They had 100% recovery from ransomware within 4 days with no data stolen or tampered with. They had their core systems back in less than 2 business days. And 0 backups were consumed by ransomware. So Kerry, I don't know if anybody knows Kerry good, but he's the IT director or CIO for the city of Durham. And he's quoted here as, "The city can be assured that our backups are good because they're immutable. We're using WhyRubrik." And I had the privilege of sitting in on a conference session that Carrie did just on their compromise and what happened and what they did. And he had nothing but praise for WhyRubrik and their solution and how they helped them recover. So, then lastly, one thing that we do not currently have that WhyRubrik will provide for us is a backup of our Microsoft 365 environment. It'll back up our email, our Teams, our SharePoint, the email boxes, as I said, our OneDrive, all things that we are starting to use heavily. It's unlimited scale. We can grow as we go, and then it's priced based off of per user. So this is something we currently do not have. We have archiving for about 60 licenses, and that's left up to the individual to send whatever they want to send to the archive for those 60 people. This would provide us backups for all of our mailboxes. So I appreciate your listening. I appreciate your consideration. I think this is a critical step for us to take. I highly recommend it. I think that if we are hit by any kind of ransomware or natural disaster, we do not have currently what it takes to recover in a timely fashion. Any questions?
Cindy, in your comparison between what we have versus what you're proposing, only what we have, are you utilizing what we have at this given moment, or has that system gotten better in those 5 years and you compared it to where it would be today?
It has not improved, but it hasn't degraded either. I mean, it is what it is. I think that when it was first implemented, I don't think there was any understanding of how cumbersome it would be to try and restore large amounts of data or a network environment. I don't think we had a clear understanding of that because it had never been tried. You don't typically restore that kind of data on a regular basis. Now, we've done files and folders on a regular basis. That's almost daily, from people inadvertently deleting things. And that works fine. But in the event that we had some sort of a compromise, we would need to be dependent upon our backup recovery solution. Data Domain Avamar is a backup solution. It's not a recovery solution.
So if we decided to stay where we were, we'd had the same thing we had 5 years ago.
Yes, sir. It has not changed. We have not done anything to it.
I don't mean us, I mean the developer of it, so they haven't improved it any.
I'm trying to recall if,
Not to your satisfaction, apparently.
no, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they do typically, just like with any system, you've got security updates, patches, that sort of thing. Those are applied on occasion, but no software upgrade that we would be privileged to.
My last question is a selfish one. Will it affect how we use our iPad any at all since we learned slow?
It would not, except that you would be better protected because any Office 365 product that you're using on that iPad would be backed up,
Okay.
where it is not now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sandy, what other, are there other solutions besides WhyRubrik that you vetted?
We did.
And why did you decide to go with WhyRubrik over the other solutions?
We looked at a couple of different other ones. The price points were very similar. I can't say that they weren't. The tipping point, I think, for WhyRubrik, we kind of rated what we looked at. And the tipping point for WhyRubrik is that it did all of our Microsoft 365 products, covered all the backup for that. Whereas the others, our second choice did not do that. The recovery time was also shorter. And I think the other sticking point was the examining of the backup data looking for anomalies. That would provide us with a clue that we had a problem.
Any other questions from the board?
Anyway, the cybersecurity world has changed since we purchased our last. So it's kind of like we can wait for the cyber attacks to come get us, or we can try to be ahead
Right.
so that they won't catch us.
And that's our goal. I mean, we go to great lengths, and especially with your support, we've been able to implement a lot of things that protect our network and protect our environment and train our employees. But nothing is 100%. This solution will protect us in the event that something gets through. Then I have confidence in this system that we can recover, and we can recover quickly.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Adam Tyson with our Planning and Inspections Department.
Adam, what do you want me to do with this? Okay.
It is 16. Let's see, where's Adam? Yeah, Adam, 16. There be light? Yeah, you're good.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry.
I think she got all that goodness stuff on. Let me see.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. The request from the planning department is not capital in the sense that you would normally think of equipment or facilities, but it's also not a normal part of our annual operational costs. The request is for $100,000 for consulting services to update and rewrite our Unified Development Ordinance. The ordinance is the collection of local laws that regulate land use. That includes our zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, watershed, floodplain, and stormwater management rules that are effective in the county's plan and jurisdiction. There are 3 reasons that our ordinance is due for a rewrite and update. The first is age. The second is consistency with the state statutes. And the third is because we're currently engaged in a land use plan update process. In terms of age, our current ordinance was adopted in October of 1998. It was adopted with the assistance of the Wooten Company. And certainly portions of it have been amended, as the board is aware, since that time, but the majority of those regulations are 23 and a half years old, which is almost a quarter century. And I think it's time to re-examine them in a comprehensive way to determine what is and is not serving our best interests. It is that time because of the state statute changes that became effective in July 2021. At that time, the state did the first major reorganization and modernization of the state's local development regulations since 1905. Previously, the municipal and county regulations were housed separately in kind of a patchwork across the state statutes. But that was a major consolidation and simplification of the state regulations. Of course, our old ordinance was written under the previous version of the state statutes. You'll recall back in July that we did make the minimum amendments necessary as recommended by the UNC School of Government to keep our current older ordinance compliant with those state statutes. But the ordinance would really benefit from being a more modern document that conforms more closely to the revised state statutes. The state legislature has gone to great lengths to streamline those statutes, and we can benefit by doing the same to our ordinance. And then finally, of course, we're currently involved in a rewrite of our land use plan. The planning department has 2 documents that we're required to have by state statute, the land use plan and the ordinance. The land use plan is an advisory document. The ordinance is the regulatory document. So that means that the land use plan serves as a guide and a vision for making land use decisions, but it is not regulatory in the sense that it has to be followed at every turn. As part of the land use plan process, we've discussed a number of ordinance amendments that probably need to be studied and enacted. That includes revising our cluster development requirements, eliminating zoning districts that require less than 20,000 square feet per lot, stricter development standards for those denser 20,000 square foot per lot developments like sidewalks, reducing residential driveway access to state roads, larger front setbacks along heavily traveled roads, and requiring subdivisions to be developed from the inside out instead of starting with any road front lots that are as a part of the development. And there are others that go into that list. And so part of the land use plan process is to generate those ideas and that list that I just talked about. But in order to make the land use process vision happen, you have to enact those rules as part of a mandatory document like the ordinance. And it is customary for a jurisdiction to rewrite their land use plan and follow that with an ordinance update. The request is for approximately $100,000 for consultant services. Of course, that's an estimate, not an actual quote. This would be a bid process where consulting firms would provide a request for proposals, and the county would choose among them. That estimate is based on information that was provided from consultants in that field. They provided a range of $100,000 to $130,000, but we balanced that with the fact that in 2021, Edgecombe County updated their Unified Development Ordinance that was based on a very similar template as ours for $66,000. So I think we can be comfortable aiming for the lower range of the numbers provided by the consultants. This is not a reoccurring annual expense. This will serve us for the next 10 to 20 years. As I mentioned, the last one has been in effect for almost a quarter century. And there is no third document coming. This would complete the update of the two documents that we're required to have in order to regulate land use in Nash County. So this is not something that you would see on the CIP in the next 5 to 10 years, and probably not even after that, because it would have quite a shelf life to it if we chose to do it. And that's the request.
Any questions for Adam?
We aren't taking any motions, ma'am.
All right.
Before Adam leaves, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I asked 6 months ago, and I was told it would happen in 3 months, about getting our.
The notice is it would be emailed out about inspection.
You're doing like my wife does now. Now I got to change the question because I want to get it like our fire inspectors have, where when they leave a job, they can notify the contractors what the inspection was.
Mm-hmm.
What happened at that timeline?
We were planning on doing that in-house, which would not require a significant financial contribution, but it would require a significant time contribution.
Yes, sir.
In 2021, when the housing market heated up, we were really overwhelmed with the amount of subdivision approvals that we had to work through. So I think that we can get a quote from the software provider, but I don't think it would exceed the $5,000 threshold for needing to be in the CIP.
Well,
We should move forward with that.
Can we get it done?
We can go ahead and get that and incorporate it into this year's budget, but I don't think I don't anticipate it being a number so high that it needs to be in the CIP range.
I think what we're underestimating, it would save the inspectors, you say they're pushed, I know they are, it would save them so much time to get this done.
In terms of follow-up
And
questions
in terms of
about,
us calling them and worrying them to death, if we would know the minute they're left, that's what we do with the fire people already.
yep,
And it's just be a true blessing for the industry. And I know I'm self-serving, but I do know it will save the county money in the long run. So if we
yeah,
could.
we'll go ahead and get that quote
Somebody
and
just
see if
get
we can
that
work it
done.
into the
Yes.
operational budget request.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll call on Jonathan Boone. Okay, I'll follow up.
afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you this afternoon talking about projects that we have identified in the Public Utility and Facility Department for consideration for the upcoming CIP. A number of these projects will likely be familiar to you if you haven't forgotten what we talked about last budget cycle. But the needs continue, and our infrastructure is aging, and with that comes maintenance requirements. So these projects, you're going to continue to hear about them until we get to the point that we can actually implement them. But just want to share some of those with you. Most of them, again, are ones that we discussed last year. I have a few new ones to discuss. And I'm going to hit these at a very high level. Otherwise, I don't think that you'll make it through your agenda today. So the requests I have basically fall into one of two areas. One, they're either general fund related projects or utility fund. And you may, again, remember that for last year. And within the general fund, I'll break these down into basically four functional areas: court facilities, admin building, public buildings, and detention facility. And they're basically focused on building maintenance and related infrastructure. There's really not anything, there's no new bells and whistles that I'm here to talk to you about today. It's really about maintaining the infrastructure that we currently have. And we currently maintain about 400,000 square feet of buildings within the county. That's what we own and operate. Utility fund, on the other hand, you may recall from last year, I had a few capital related projects, infrastructure related projects, but with the introduction of ARPA funds into the conversation, and I think you will be talking about that maybe tomorrow, our utility fund requests have basically turned into vehicle replacement or new vehicle requests. But I'll talk a little bit about that. But the big number you see at the bottom have about $2.5 million worth of projects we've identified in the general fund, again, across those four functional areas, and about $50,000 within the utility fund. First, we'll talk about court facilities. Within court facilities, and again, if we just focus on 2023 requests, we have 4 requests for next fiscal year for your consideration. And then there's one project I'll touch on briefly. I've currently shown it in future years, but it's likely something we'll need to address before then, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But those projects for next fiscal year total $717,000. And this is one of the slides you may remember from last year. We talked about the old courthouse. So to the left, we have the, I don't know if I have a pointer. To the left is a picture of the entire block there: Washington Street, Body Street, Drake Street, Elm Street. You can see the new courthouse. And what we're focusing on is the portion of the complex to the west, so the older portion of the courthouse facility. And based on some issues that we identified about 2 years ago, we engaged Oakley Collier Architects to conduct a building assessment of those buildings. And you can see them highlighted there. And the vintage of those buildings date from the late 1800s. That's the old courthouse in green. The most recent building being to the far right, which was an addition constructed in 1986. And there were various additions all in between. But elements that we evaluated were roofing systems, windows, and masonry. And really the masonry is what first tipped us off. And you may recall, commissioners did approve, and we certainly appreciate that, a mid-year appropriation of about $300,000 to deal with some issues in that 1986 building that I just referred to. But there were other needs across the balance of the complex. And those are the ones that I've requested, a portion of which in the upcoming fiscal year. But as it relates to the masonry, the primary issues are, at the period of time they were constructed, there were no control joints in the masonry. So if you're familiar with construction, even if you look at our existing admin building or the new courthouse, you'll see long vertical construction joints in the masonry. And that's to accommodate some movement in that masonry. Older construction prior to 1986, you would not see that. Also, newer construction incorporates moisture management systems into the construction so that water can weep out from behind the masonry. If it were to penetrate the cladding on the building, it can weep out through the bottom. Older construction did not make provisions for that. And those are the issues that we're dealing with in the older portion of the courthouse. So again, Oakley Collier, we engaged them to come in, conduct an assessment. They brought in some subject matter experts, again, looking at the roof, looking at the masonry. They actually removed a portion of the masonry to see what was behind the masonry cladding. And that's where we started seeing problems. So effectively, outside of the money the commissioners, not we, the commissioners approved earlier this calendar year for the work on that 1986 portion, we've got some waterproofing work we need to do. We've got to point up some masonry. We likely will need to add some treatment, particularly on that older portion of the courthouse, that 1880 section, to try to mitigate moisture penetration through the masonry. So next fiscal year, I believe the number we'd requested was $450,000 for that work. And then we would come back and complete the balance of the work in, I believe it was FY '24, and that was $415,000, if I remember my number correctly. And this is just excerpts from that report. The next item I have for you is the elevator in the old courthouse. You may recall that you approved money to rehabilitate the older elevator in the sheriff's office. And we've completed that work, and this is the next elevator that we have on our list. I do not recall the exact vintage of this elevator, but the paneling kind of gives it away. I would say we're certainly north of 30 years on that elevator. And if you have had an opportunity to use that elevator, you can appreciate that, that the time has come for us to consider upfitting the cab and the mechanisms that drive the elevator. So we are requesting funds in next fiscal year to replace that elevator or upfit that elevator, and that was $180,000. I mentioned the assessment that was conducted by Oakley Collier Architects in those buildings that I showed you in a few slides previously. There's about 107 windows. Some of those, again, are showing their age. Pictures may not do it justice. You may be able to pick up on the middle photo there, top right. You can see some rot in the window, and we need to go back. We need to address the glazing. There's some work that needs to be done to those, again, to address moisture penetration through those windows. If we were to replace those windows, we would probably, and we would love to have more energy efficient windows, but for 107 windows, we estimate that would be about a $1.5 million investment. So what we would look to do is basically have someone come in, repair the windows, any areas that need attention, reglaze windows, caulk, waterproof them, so that we could get, extend the life of those windows. So next fiscal year, again, and we would do this work in stages. Next fiscal year, we've requested $75,000 for that work. Mentioned roofs. Roofs are always a concern. And I mentioned we have buildings that date back to the late 1800s, and these roofs, based on the work of Oakley Collier and the subject matter expert that they brought in from Raleigh, are in need of replacements. Some are more problematic than others, but you can see that we've evaluated each of those. We've prioritized those, and we are requesting $200,000 next fiscal year to address. Basically, it's the one of the roof on the superior behind the Superior Courtroom, and I believe it's the three roofs there in the 1921 building that the sheriff's office is housed, and then we would complete that the rest of that work in a future year. And here's just some photos here showing, this is the one bottom left is actually the 1986 edition. It's a membrane roof, ballasted roof. You can see some photos there where you have scuppers, and interestingly enough, that scupper is probably 8 inches above the elevation of the roof, so water would really have to get to fairly deep before those scuppers will ever activate. But the roof is showing its age, and then this is the addition around the Superior Courtroom. As you can tell from that photo, that that roof is reaching the end of its useful life. Another project we've identified is the need to seal and stripe the parking lot beside the courthouse. You may recall within the past 9 months, we completed a repair. You can see it in the second image there, the depression we had on the west side of that parking lot. We completed that work. I think that turned out really well. You can see the parking lot's been crack sealed. I believe that was right before I came in 2019. But in order to extend the life of that parking lot, again, it's all about mitigating water intrusion into the asphalt, into the subbase. We are recommending that the parking lot be sealed and restriped. And we believe we can do that work for about $12,000 if funded in fiscal year '23. I mentioned this as a future year project. If you had a chance to review the CIP, at present we've shown $200,000 out in the future year. This is a project that resulted from a conversation between Superior Court Judge, Clerk of Court, and the County Manager in the fall of 2021. And we've completed some work in the courtroom. Not sure if you've had a chance to visit the courtroom in a while. It's primarily only used for larger court cases, so certainly most of court proceedings now are handled in the new courthouse. But there are still larger cases from time to time that would be handled in this particular courtroom. We had some issues with the HVAC units, and we'll talk some more about HVAC units. We had to replace 2 of those in the ceiling. There was a leak, damaged the roof. The ceiling was caving in. As you can imagine, that was a safety concern. So we were able to replace those 2 HVAC units for about $20,000 and repair the ceiling. We basically removed all of the existing ceiling, had a popcorn covering on it. Not sure exactly when that was installed. It was not appropriate for the historic context of that courtroom. But nonetheless, we removed it, replaced it. Everything is fine now. But it further, I think, pointed to the need for some attention to that courtroom and really reinvesting in that courtroom because it's the historical context and, again, the ongoing need for that facility. So based on a conversation between Judge Sumner, Ms. Thorne, and the county manager, we engaged, again, Oakley Collier Architects to come in, basically look at the entire facility, interior primarily, to see what work can be done to renovate and rehabilitate that courtroom. So that work is still underway. I do not have a number yet. We've had some preliminary schematics provided by Oakley. I'm waiting on cost estimates based on a proposed plan of action. In all likelihood, we'll have to phase some of that work, but I just want to make you aware of that. I know Judge Sumner knows that y'all are meeting today and tomorrow, so if you cross paths with him, he will likely ask you about this project, so I wanted to make sure to put a bug in your ear about it. All right, next set of projects we have is for the administrative building, so the main building there in Nashville. And you can see that we have 8 projects requested for next fiscal year, and they total about $1.4 million. The biggest of which is the roof. The roof dates back to construction of the building. The building, as I understand, was commissioned in 1999, so we have a membrane roof that's about 23 years old. And general rule of thumb is for a membrane roof, you can expect it to last about 20 years. So it's given us 3 additional years of service and continues to serve. But we do encounter leaks from time to time. We do have a contractor that comes in to address those leaks, make the repairs as best they can. But those membrane roofs, they are a petroleum-based product. They age over time. They become more brittle. They become more difficult to repair. And eventually, we run the risk of a catastrophic failure. Can I tell you when that's going to happen? No, I cannot. If I could, well, that would be a great tool that I would have in my toolbox. But I do not have that tool. But I can tell you, again, rule of thumb for a membrane roof, 20 years. And the vendor that we use, each time he comes to make a repair, encourages us to think strongly about replacing that roof. So we had a report, commissioned a report back in 2019. Raymond Engineering came in, actually conducted an assessment, had a drone infrared imaging. You can see some of that here. In this case, although I am a big fan of red, on this particular image, red is not a good thing. So on the right side, you will see 5 blocks, 4 of those are red, and it's just like a stoplight. Red means stop. And Raymond Engineering was recommending that we start thinking seriously about replacement of that roof in the not-too-distant future. At that time, in 2019, as I recall, the estimate to replace the roof was a little over $500,000. Naturally, in this current environment, those costs have accelerated, and we currently estimate that it will cost about $700,000 to replace that roof. So again, we can continue to work with the same roof that we have. We can utilize a run-to-failure approach, and when we have a significant failure, address it then. Of course, there will be some time to ramp up, get a project out to bid, get a vendor lined up, get the roof repaired. But again, it's just an item that I want to continue to bring to your attention, let you know that it's just a matter of time before we're going to have to do that work, and at some point, we run the risk of a catastrophic failure.
Jonathan, do you? I'm sorry.
Replacement on the administrative building,
have you put a time on it,
If I put a time on it,
a time of when it should be done before we create,
He's got it proposed for next year.
got what?
He's got it proposed for this coming year, is what he's asking for.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear him say that.
yeah, so if
We need it.
the commissioners were to find a way to fund this project in fiscal year '23, in all likelihood, the approach that we would take is go ahead and start working on an RFP if we could, so that as soon as funds are available to move forward with replacing the roof, we would try to do so.
Jonathan, do you know what we're spending annually on repairs?
We've actually had a pretty good year this year. We've had a few leaks. Prior years have been a little more problematic. But this year, I don't think we've had more than maybe 2 or 3 repairs. So we've been really fortunate. Previous years, we've had a little higher frequency for repairs. I want to say we've had, last time we looked, it was like $20,000 or $30,000 in repairs over the last 2 or 3 years. So again, we've been really fortunate with the roof we have. When this roof was constructed in 1999, I think the county got us money's worth. We've got 23 years out of that roof. But the longer we go, the bigger risk we take.
Thank you.
I just noticed it, is that a flat roof?
It is a flat roof, yes, sir.
Why don't we change that? to a
Well, it's really
handshake?
about cost of construction, and that's a typical approach for that type of roof. And, you know, that was a decision that the county made back in the late 90s. And to retrofit that building with a different roofing system now would be really cost prohibitive.
As long as a flat roof, water is gonna find its way to go somewhere.
That's correct.
And it's gonna get into any cracks or anything.
Design and quality of construction is very important with a flat roof. So again, that's that infrared image I talked about. And really, just for your edification, what these images are showing are areas based on the drone. It detects heat. Where you have water intrusion, it will retain the heat. And that's what the infrared image is picking up in these images. And that's the admin building, obviously, on the left, DSS Annex to the right. Carpet replacement. Again, we're at the admin building. We're in a building that is 23 years old. Mike was kind enough to provide me with a dearth of images, but I didn't have room for all of them, and I just selected these 3. They all look very similar, but they all tell a similar story. The carpet is 23 years old, and in the not-too-distant future, the county needs to think about replacing the carpet. And what we propose in the CIP is basically a phased approach: first floor, second floor, third floor, DSS. So we would complete that work over 4 years. First year would be first floor. We'd start in EMS. Scott, looking out for you. $132,000 first year. We see $135,000 second year, $90,000 third year, and $130,000 in the fourth year for DSS. All right, next item we have for you is vehicle replacement, and this is the existing van that we have in facility maintenance for our custodians, this van is also reaching the end of its useful life. It is a 1999 Ford Econoline 250. Unfortunately, we had the unfortunate experience, I believe it was this past summer, someone decided they needed the catalytic converter more than we did, and they decided to take it, and we had to replace it. So I believe we spent about $1,500 to replace the catalytic converter. So I would say the market value of this van now is about $2,500. But what we recommend is we replace this van in the next fiscal year, and the number we have there is $32,000. And then we have a couple other units, 3 units over the ensuing years, 2 in 24, 1 in 25. I'm sure this van has a nickname, but I don't know what it is. All right. Again, this is a project you may recall us discussing last year. I'm sure you're aware we've completed the work on the first floor as far as security enhancements. We've discussed some changes to the building to address some security concerns. We completed the upfit in EMS, and the work we have left is on the second floor and the third floor of the administrative building. What we've requested in FY23 is upfit on the second floor, and that would be for the planning department and the tax office. And you can see the proposed improvements here, basically creating a lobby with controlled access on the front side of planning, and a similar controlled access in the tax listing office. And the proposed improvements in planning, adjusting for current construction cost, we estimate would cost about $100,000, and in the tax office, $85,000. Third floor, we have County Manager's Office and Finance. On the left there, you can see again adding controlled access and eliminating the free access from County Manager's Office over to the Finance Office. Estimate that work to be about $85,000. Veterans Office, again creating a kind of a lobby reception area in the front of their space. $45,000. Parks and Rec, Grants Governmental Affairs, similar approach, $40,000. Human Resources, $35,000. Again, that's a future year request. So for FY23, we have requested $185,000 to complete the work on the second floor of the administrative building. All right, next project we come to is the tile on the first floor of the administrative building. Again, you may recall this project from last fiscal year. Again, this tile and carpet there date back to 1999 when the building was constructed. We've replaced the tile in the area where the screening station has been constructed up to the point we've added those double doors leading to EMS, so this will be the work beyond the double doors. We've estimated that work to cost $20,000. All right, next project we have for you is the HVAC controls. Again, we're in a building that was constructed in 1999. The HVAC controls date back to 1999. So as a result, what we're finding is parts are getting harder to come by when we have issues, whether it be thermostats or whether it be the VAV control boxes. And know what you recognize the picture is on the left, but that's a VAV control box to the right. And basically, these are the units in the ceiling connected to the thermostats and are used to control temperatures in smaller areas of the building. And again, those units are getting more and more difficult to find parts to replace. So what we are requesting are funds in fiscal year 23. Again, we're taking a floor-by-floor approach within a building. We'd love to do it more or less all at once, but recognize there's a lot of projects that we'd like to tackle. So for next fiscal year, we would start on the first floor in EMS. You're welcome, Scott. $95,000, FY24, second floor at $115,000, third floor in fiscal year 25 at $80,000. Again, we talked about the parking lot at the courthouse. We were fortunate enough with the work on Elm Street, and that picture, I guess, would be behind me back to the east. Replace some of the area in the existing parking lot, the admin building, with new asphalt. But the existing portion, you can see we crack sealed. Again, I think that was done about the same time as the courthouse was. But it is showing its age, and we would recommend, again, to help prevent water intrusion into the asphalt, into the sub-base, which cause base failures and will reduce the life of the pavement that we seal and stripe the parking lot at the administrative building. And we've estimated that work to be $15,000. Any questions? Again, I told you I would move quick. Public buildings, let's see, we have a couple of projects here. One is HVAC replacements. Again, this is a project we talked about last year, just trying to take a more proactive stance as it comes to our equipment. And we've got 400,000 foot of building space. That means we have 400,000 square foot of heating and cooling space. And those units, we have some, I believe Bill brought a couple with him when he started with the county over at the Nashville Health Department that are north of 20 years old. I believe have a couple that are 17 years old with 22-year-old condensers, and another, honestly, the plate was so old that neither facility maintenance staff or the vendor that worked with us to assess our equipment could tell you how old it was. So again, what we would advocate the county consider doing is being a little bit more proactive. Again, we can continue a run-to-fail approach if we're so inclined and just replace these units when they go down. But naturally, there's a lag. You're somewhat susceptible to the whims of the market in this environment, which could be problematic. So to be a little bit more proactive, we would recommend budgeting some money each year, picking off some of those older units so that we avoid failures in these spaces. So we've requested $30,000 over the next 4 years for that purpose. All right, next item I have is space needs study. So and there's that unit you cannot read the plate on. And the coils, which also needed some attention. Space needs study. As we've discussed this item, and we had a conversation a couple of months ago, it's clear that the existing building, again, constructed in 1999, has served the county well. It's provided for us for 23 years. But we're getting to the point now, and you're seeing it, that we are strapped for space. We've commandeered the commissioner's library for office space. We're using the office space that's on the backside between finance and the commissioner's library. And DSS, I think they're staffing people in broom closets last time I checked. So what we recommend is the county, again, try to be a little bit more proactive and take these requests so that we could be a little bit more measured, be a little bit more proactive, think ahead in terms of what we're going to need, both near term and long term, and develop a plan to meet those needs. So again, the existing building has served us well, but we're getting to the point now that we're really running out of space. And we're seeing that in DSS, which I mentioned, and finance office, using some of those office spaces on that back hall we mentioned earlier. Grants Governmental Affairs, again, they're now housed in the Commissioner's Library. And planning is also short on office space, and I believe Adam will be talking to you about a personnel request later today. We've also got some buildings that are, again, reaching the end of their useful life. The Nashville Health Department needs some attention. I know that's a conversation that the county has, or an idea that the county has entertained. It's possibly relocating their operations if we resolve that issue at the Health Department. And also the building in Rocky Mount is also showing its age. EMS mentioned, or Scott will be talking to you later today about staffing requests that he has, and I know that has been an ongoing conversation for the past few years. Also aware that EMS has identified the need to expand the call center in the not-too-distant future, so that may likely eat into the conference room beside the call center. The Sheriff's Office also reviewed the spreadsheet. See, there's a number of personnel requests for the Sheriff's Office, and they are running short on space in their existing building, which, again, was constructed in 1921. Let's see what else. Parks and Recreation, Veteran Affairs. I believe one of the items we'll be talking about is possibly an expansion to the Nashville Senior Center, maybe some discussion about relocating their operations. Not sure exactly where that would land. But again, we've got all these questions, if you will, decisions to make that's kind of looming. And we felt like if we could kind of pool all this information together and maybe gauge someone with some outside expertise to help us think about our building needs, again, both near term and longer term, that would be a more proactive way in which to handle these types of issues. So these are just some examples here. Most of these are municipalities. There are two counties here. One was Brunswick County, and I believe the other may have been Burke County. I just wanted to share that with you. And as far as the approach that we would take, typically what you would see is we would issue an RFP. We would hire someone with some expertise in this area, names that you would come across, you'd be familiar with. Mosley Architects would be one example. Dewberry and Davis may be a firm you're familiar with. Creech and Associates is a name that I've seen pop up a couple of times, specifically on those studies that I showed on the previous slide. So there are firms out there that do this work. And typically what they would do, they would come in and look at your existing office space, evaluate that space. They would look at the departments, the interoperability between departments, what departments need to be adjacent to support their operations, both internal operations and external for customers coming in. Then they would engage the departments, try to evaluate what their near-term needs are, future needs are, then basically develop a plan, prioritize those needs, come up with an implementation plan, put some costs to it, work with the county to develop a plan that meets the county's needs and meets the county's budget. So that's the item we have for you to consider, and budget number we have for that work is about $85,000. All right, and the last of general fund projects is detention center projects. First one I have here is HVAC controls replacement. Certainly with the project that's currently underway, new addition, the building automation system that we use to control the heating and cooling in the building will be new to the facility. We have an existing system in the existing 40,000 square feet. It's basically Snyder equipment with a system built over top of that, automated logic. All of our other systems were developed by Snyder, Snyder Automation, Snyder Equipment. And in an ideal world, what we would like to see is, in conjunction with the work on the addition at the detention facility, is come back and incorporate the existing 40,000 square foot into that system, have one system as opposed to having one vendor for equipment, another vendor for the building automation. Because you can imagine, you may have experienced it yourself, if you've got an issue, if you're talking to Snyder, it's an automated logic problem, and if you're talking to automated logic, it's a Snyder problem. And it'll be great if we had one vendor for both, and then we could cut out a portion of that conversation. But the existing system has some limitations. I know the county had invested in updating that system back during one of my predecessors here, Derek Hawks. System has served us well, but the time has come to think about replacing that system. And we think the best time to do that is while work is underway on the addition at the detention facility. And you can see that number there based on an proposal from Daniels & Daniels, working with their vendors, is about $200,000. Next project we have, you may remember from last year, and actually commissioners funded this work, but due to COVID and work on the capital project, we were unable to get to that this year. So this would really be rebudgeting the funds that were approved in FY22 for some emergency power upgrades for the existing portion of the jail and for the sheriff's office. And we're recommending the same dollar amount as we requested last year, $25,000. And final project we have is a two-way communication system. This is really a requirement for operations at the jail, both in the corridors for staff, but also in the housing areas for the inmates. If there would be an inmate under distress, they would have the ability to call main control, get a hold of an officer, and they could dispatch someone there if there's a disturbance, if there's a medical emergency, if there's some kind of issue that requires their attention. The call boxes that we currently have in the jail date back to the work that was completed in the late 90s, building dorms 1, 2, and 3, and the special housing unit. And like the equipment in the admin building, it dates back to 1998. The ability to find parts to replace the system is becoming more problematic. Not so much for facility maintenance. This is actually a system that the jail or the sheriff's office maintains. But as part of my work with the jail and the annual inspections by the state, this is an item that is routinely cited by the state, and it is a safety concern. So what we're recommending, and the sheriff's office was able to secure a couple of quotes, is to replace and upgrade that system, something similar to what you see there on the right. That would basically be a handset that would actually have the ability to capture video in the area where the call box is depressed, and then they could establish two-way communication and address whatever the issue may be. But you can imagine, and this is particularly disconcerting when we're walking through the facility with the state, when you hit that button on the call box and you can't get somebody to answer in the main control, if you had an issue with an inmate or an inmate was in distress and nobody answered, that could be a significant liability for the county. So I tend to agree with the sheriff's office that this is, and the state, that this is an item that we need to consider replacing sooner rather than later. And again, recommended budget's $150,000. Again, I mentioned water and sewer. You may remember some projects that would include on the list last year, but again, with availability of ARPA money, basically what we're requesting FY23 is replacement of one vehicle that we've had to have towed to the boneyard due to some transmission and other issues. And it's basically do not consider to be a good use of funds to invest the $8,500, $9,000 we'd have to invest in that 2014 truck to repair it. So we put that truck down, and we'd like to replace it next fiscal year. And then we have a new position request where we would require a vehicle And that is the second item listed there for $25,000 next fiscal year.
Commissioners, if you're looking for that on your chart there, it's on page 20 under the enterprise funds for the water sewer,
We were looking for it.
the vehicle that he just talked about.
That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Yes, ma'am.
The first one was in detention center. I think that number had changed, the HVAC. In our packet, we had 100,000 for the detention center Phase 2 HVAC controls. Is
Thank you,
200.
and I'd highlighted that for
Okay.
reasons. I appreciate you picking up on that. And we just received that number from Daniels and Daniels in the last 24 hours. So I did update my presentation, but thank you for catching that.
And then my second question, the parking lot seal and restripe in the courthouse parking, is there any money that we had already approved in the detention center remodel for that area, being, we're rerouting traffic and Drake Street's gonna become a two-way street? Is there any money already allocated for redoing that parking lot in the future?
No. I think the short answer is no. Now, if we get to the end of the project and there's money left, there may be some things we can consider incorporating into the scope, although it's not typically something that Daniels and Daniels would do just because of the scope of the work. But at present, that is not part of the scope of work for the project. There obviously is improvements proposed on Drake Street. That is incorporated into the project, but nothing off right-of-way, such as a parking lot. That's private property. So we only focus on the improvements within the public right-of-way.
Which parking lot did you ask about, Sue?
The courthouse parking lot?
The big parking lot.
Correct. Because currently, the residents are having to use the parking lot to get back.
But you did ask for money to re-seal it.
Yes, sir.
Stripe it.
She's asking, is there money in the capital project where we might be able to do that work? And I'm saying currently, no. When we get to the end of the capital project with Daniels and Daniels, if there's money left, that may be something we can consider. But that is actually beyond FY '23. So we won't
So
be able to answer
your
that
question,
for a
Sue,
while.
was rather than have it here, to move it back in the current project.
No,
Now, he's gotta ask for it in here.
no, what I was asking is, have we already looked at that parking lot and having to do anything to that parking lot in the future?
Well, he's asked for money to do something in it, in this
Right,
request.
just seal it. But,
Right.
that parking lot's pretty awkward to move around in and to
Okay, I'm with you
go
now.
through.
Now, I will say that is one of the reasons we accelerated that work, and it cost the county about $30,000 to deal with the, I used to refer to as the Big Dipper, that depression on the west side. And that is one of the things the town of Nashville was concerned about when we first were having this conversation about closing Drake Street, and the work proposed for the building addition is reasons why we moved forward. But we recognize there will still be traffic through that parking lot, no doubt.
So do you see any major work we need to do in that parking lot that we haven't already done, or we're doing if you get this request approved?
Do I?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
Any question? On the courthouse, the old courthouse, proposing, the things that's being proposed here, we're talking about quite a bit of money. And any thought been given to make that a historical building and not keep it in use for the operating departments out of it? I think what the clerk of court's office is still in there, am I right?
Yes, sir.
And I remember when we were planning for the new courthouse, that the clerk at that time didn't want to move. But probably a mistake that when we were planning it, we should have gone on and taken care of that. That building is if it's continued to be used, it's gonna be costing us, the county, quite a bit of money to keep it up. It's old, and it ought to be declared a historical building site. Maybe it might have people have it safe so that people may want to tour it and see an old courthouse, but we need to stop using it.
Well, a couple of comments I've had. One, I'd say there's nothing wrong with being old. There's a place for old. Second thing I'd say
Should have
is,
been replaced when we built the courthouse, the new part.
second thing I'd say, that would be an excellent question that we would roll into the space needs study. What would be the most appropriate use of the county's resources? Is it to stay in that existing space, reinvest in that space? Is it possibly relocate? But that is something we would roll into a space needs study, so we could think about the question more holistically as opposed to taking a one-off. You know, we deal with this issue, we put out this fire, and then we find ourselves, you know, several months later, we're fighting a different fire. Let's try to put them all together, think about what makes the most sense over the long term, and then develop a plan to address the question and the needs.
Well, we're spending a lot of money patching and adding on, and in my opinion, that was not the right thing to have done in the beginning.
Well,
But, the only thing now is, I guess, is to find what is the best solution and not talk about what was done in the past.
well, I mean, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You're constantly faced with questions that have trade-offs. There's advantages and disadvantages to either decision you make. I would love to come out of this meeting think that I convinced you that we need to spend $2.5 million next year. I'm reasonably confident that's not going to happen. But I'd love for you to prove me wrong. But, you know, it's back to trade-offs. Certainly, the county could decide we want to decommission these older buildings and we want to build new buildings. And we could probably find a way to do that. But there would obviously be a trade-off to that. And I can theorize what those trade-offs would be, but, you know, there would be trade-offs. So, but I agree with you. Maintaining old buildings, there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Boone?
I think you did a great presentation. I would have one comment. I'd like for you, Stacy, to look at the two-way communication system and see if we have any funds in the current budget where we could go ahead and move forward with that.
Okay.
It's just a dire need. It shows up on every inspection we get over there. And it's just a situation sitting there waiting for something bad to happen. And it was on our last year report 2 weeks ago.
I actually already have a plan for this year's money to share with you tomorrow.
Okay, great. Okay, good. That's just one I think needs attention like right away.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. If I could call on Scott Rogers to present. Sheriff is not with us. He's gonna, Commissioners, just FYI, he couldn't be here today. He's gonna be with you first thing in the morning to present his request.
Thought I was gonna have to do his when you called on me. Thank you for clarifying that.
Give him some. I'm sorry, excuse me, I was asked to share the reason why he couldn't be with us. He's in court today, so he had
He's
to.
in a federal court case today. It wasn't anything he could control in his defense. Is that all right, ma'am?
Yes. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I've been looking forward to being in front of you more for quite a long time. It's a pleasure to be here. So the first request that you see in our section is in the Emergency Communications Division, which would be replacing our emergency radio dispatch consoles. The consoles, we installed new consoles into our center in '99 when we moved into the new facility, and we have upgraded them one time. but the consoles that we currently have reached their end of life. So as of December of this past year, there's no longer support or frontline parts available for those. So you'll see that this is a $1.2 million project. We have 7 consoles in Rocky Mount and 7 consoles in Nashville that would need replacing, but the request is for $704,759. The reason for that is that we have spoken with the North Carolina 911 board, and they have approved that we use a little over $500,000 of 911 revenue to fund that project if it is in fact approved by you folks. You want to take questions individually, or you would like for me to finish them all and then come back?
I think they're pretty good about speaking up when they've got them, so you
Okay,
can.
all right, that's great.
Scott, did you kind of go over that again? You mentioned the 911 money.
Yes, sir. If you, actually, later in this document that you have in front of you, you will see the special fund we have that comes from the 911 surcharge that everyone pays on their phones. And of course, the use of those funds are regulated by the North Carolina 911 board. So based on the money we have on hand in our special fund, they have approved us to use $520,000 of that money toward the new consoles.
Okay, great.
I'm wondering, you say the ones in Nashville were put in 99, been replaced one time. The ones in Rocky Mount haven't been there near that long or
That's
half
right.
that long.
That's right.
Nor have they been used much at all. Do you have to keep them all the same? Is that the issue?
Unfortunately, they do have to be the same series of consoles in both locations. So you make a great point, is that when we opened the 911 center in Rocky Mount, the backup center, is when we upgraded. We had to buy new at that time for Rocky Mount, upgrade the ones in Nashville, and now we're at a time where we've got to upgrade again, and we have to do them all at one time.
So we'll be taking some out that have been used very, very little.
That's true. Yes, sir. Yeah. The other problem is, unfortunately, if we don't replace all 14, the 911 board won't allow us to use money to replace any of them. Not very productive, but I understand your concern.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And unfortunately, with these consoles, and the word console is a little bit misleading. What we're actually talking about here is the computer processing equipment on the desk. And really, the age and the use of it is not as much of an issue as it is the technology. The technology is older technology.
Well, I feel better now.
Okay, good. Glad you asked then. So the next two items that I have in emergency services, emergency management and fire marshal, as well as EMS, are vehicle replacements. I have asked our staff, once I moved over at the end of last year, I asked our staff to develop a fleet replacement plan so that we could better plan for the future on replacing vehicles. So I'd like to go over emergency services, fire marshal first. 2 of the vehicles we have in that division are well up in mileage. We have a 2008 unit that has 147,000 and unfortunately is experiencing some pretty severe transmission issues. We also have a 2012 vehicle that has 162,000 miles on it, and it too is in need of some repair work to the tune of about $1,200, which is certainly the vehicle's worth that, but it's at a point where it's beginning to be problematic on a regular basis. These vehicles are, of course, used every day by our fire marshals and emergency management staff during their daily routines, and then, of course, are used to mobilize some of our emergency management equipment that we have, our trailers and generators and all of that. The 2012 vehicle is a larger vehicle that we use to tow some of our larger equipment, and it has been deployed out of town on several occasions. That's why the mileage has got higher on it than the older one. So in that division, we actually have 3 vehicles assigned currently, and 2 of them just have not been replaced for some time and are high mileage. In EMS, we're requesting, if you look at our fleet management program, we have 21 ambulances as well as 7 QRVs in the system. So quite frankly, in order to keep them replaced on a reasonable basis, we have to do 2 or 3 per year. So this year, we have actually requested 3 ambulances, which, as you well know, we have remounted our ambulances for many years. We are at a point now where the bodies we have reached the end of life, and due to the safety requirements and so forth, we just can't continue to do that. So we are in a replacement year. So we have a request here for 3 ambulances, as well as 2 of the QRVs. One of the QRVs we'd like to replace has 188,000 miles on it, and the other one has 245,000. And they're they have been somewhat problematic for a while. I would like for you to understand that our process and our plan is that when we purchase new QRVs, like if you could approve this year, those vehicles go to our frontline response, and the vehicle that's on frontline response gets passed down to an administrative position or a much less run vehicle. So obviously, the one with 245,000 miles on it, that's a pretty good track record, but it ran first due for several years, then was passed down, and it's assigned to one person. They can kind of look after it a little better and be a little more tender with it and so forth. So that would be our plan. If we did purchase 2 new ones, they would be frontline run vehicles, and we would pass down older vehicles. And I believe that's my request. Again, be happy to answer any questions I could.
I don't know if you can answer or somebody else. Can we use ARP money to buy these ambulances? Is that a possibility?
ARP money, I think there's a possibility. I mean, I hate to say this, different workarounds with ARP money that are possibility, but right now, the way that we have allocated the funds, there's none available at this point to set aside for new ambulances.
Tomorrow, we're going to review our ARP budget as well as a budget that I sent out to you about the lease payment agreement that we're receiving from Nash UNC Hospital for the current fiscal year. We'll review those budgets tomorrow, and we have some plans.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
But
You said ARP for what project? That's what
ambulances.
Ambulances, okay. The reason I ask is we did identify that we can possibly use some ARP funding on the console project. Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? Do you want me to move on to the special fund while I'm here, or come back?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's on page 20.
I don't mind coming back if
You're
you're
fine.
Yeah,
no,
20.
What
So-
page?
Page 20.
So if you move along to page 20, you'll see the special revenue funds, the 911 emergency communications. Again, this is the 911 funds that are generated through the surcharge, as I was discussing before. And you see 2 items there. One is the $520,000 that I spoke of for the console project, if approved. And then the other is a $15,700 project. In the 911 center, we have, of course, our protocols where when someone calls in to 911, the communicator goes through a series of questions with them. That is all automated in our computer system. But of course, in the event of a failure, they have to be able to revert to a paper copy, if you will, to be able to continue that service. The company that does that for us has discontinued that paper copy piece and has now put it on a tablet, which we would have to maintain in the center. So it's a backup to our computer system in the event of a failure, so that they wouldn't have to, not be able to triage that call appropriately. And that is an approved expenditure for the 911 board, so that would require no general fund dollars.
Okay. Any questions for Scott? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to take a quick 10-minute break, but before we do, and before we, I know Mr. Outlaw needs to leave us before we end our day. So if I could just be so bold as to give you all a homework assignment.
That's pretty bold.
It is, isn't it? But on page 199, is a budget that that has been developed with the payment that we're going to receive from the hospital for the current year. If you all wouldn't mind taking a look at that this evening and see how that's been set up, and some of the items that you just heard about from our department heads are outlined on that budget, page 199 again. But if you would, just take some time to look that over tonight so that we can have some productive discussion about it tomorrow. And Scott just talked about in the 911 fund having $520,673 budgeted in 911 funds for those consulates that he talked about. And obviously, that won't cover the cost of those. The remaining cost of those, $704,759, is in this budget here. So just to kind of close the gap on that and give you an understanding of what our thought process is at this point in time. And I had just said to you a few moments ago about the two-way communication system in the detention center, Chairman Davis, and that's outlined on here as well. So I'm sorry, but I gave you a homework assignment.
It won't take long.
No, it won't. Okay, can we take a 10-minute break, and then when we get back, we do need to move it along. We've got a lot of ground still to cover, and we need to get it covered. So 10 minutes, please. All right, we'll get back started again. I did want to let everyone in the room know that because of timing, Chairman Davis and I and Adam Tyson have a meeting back at the office at 4:30, so we will have a hard stop at 4:10. And if you have not presented yet, I apologize, but I need you to be back in the morning at 9 o'clock so that we can pick up and get those salary or not salary, but position and reclassification presentations done. And if that creates a problem for someone, just reach out to me and let me know. So we will go ahead and move on and ask for Mr. Hill to come and present.
I will move very quickly along these items. First one is animal control. I will say it's difficult to always go behind Mr. Rogers. Now, that's a tough task to always meet, but I will attempt to do so. But animal control is the first one. Got a truck there. We've got about 150,000 miles on a 2015. We try to rotate them out every third or fourth year. And it's coming up with a rotation last year and this year. And that's what I'm requesting. That comes with a box. Truck on state contract would be around 31,000. Box about 15,000. That's the request for next fiscal year. And out a couple of years from now, you see 30,000. That's because we won't have to replace a box on the back. Moving on to the health department, got 4 vehicles. I'm going to request used surplus vehicles, which we've used so much in the different areas. These are people on our hospital campus office. We've got about 8 over there. Going to try to go with 4 a year. Try to go with used vehicles, we think around $15,000. No county funds involved, all state Medicaid reserve funds and what's called CC Children's Outreach Program and Obstetrical Outreach Program. 4 vehicles there for $60,000. In years to come, you can see out 24, 25, where we're looking at things like health department replacement, whether we look at an existing building like on the hospital campus, it could be $500,000 to $1 million, projected out at $1 million. Looking at land purchase, if it's a different location at $150,000, and probably looking if you had to build a new 40,000 square foot building, somewhere around $12 to $13 million. That concludes my presentation on those 2 items, but I could skip over and go to the landfill if you'd like for me to. Landfill, we are starting to replace some equipment.
That's on page 20, Commissioners. It's your last item on page 20.
starting to replace some equipment at the landfill, which we very much need to do. We bought a used 2012 compactor this past year for $250,000. We would enter a lease option purchase agreement for a couple of months, and it served us well to apply that money to the purchase. We actually even traded in our old compactor also. But for next year, I've got a used excavator budgeted out there at $250,000, same as we budgeted for a compactor this year. Also a dump truck for and all these would of course be used or surplus at $25,000. And we have found some prices in the DOT surplus area, not recently, in that $20,000 to $25,000 bracket. And a tractor we're really looking for ongoing even now and I've got it budgeted again next year for $35,000 used tractor. This would be about a 100 horsepower tractor with a container with air conditioning heat that we would need, but not a very big trailer and a tractor and a used tractor at that. I think those three pieces of equipment conclude my request at the landfill. And also, I should mention, this would be out of the enterprise fund and not any additional local appropriation that would be needed for these purchases there. You see in 2024, Mr. Outlaw has left, and a special interest there with a convenience center at $1.5 million. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Hill?
Your enterprise fund bill, we hadn't had a storm in a number of years. What's it looking like now?
What's that again, sir?
The enterprise fund balance, what does it look like now with no storms in a number of years?
Okay, are we talking about $5 million, Donna? 4 or 5 million in the enterprise fund?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think we're talking about that. Hopefully, we've done very well. And you're right, with no storms. Like one of the storms several years back, we were able to exceed $1 million in tipping fees to add to our reserve fund, which comes in very good.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hill? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we will be moving back to page 19, about middle of the page, and I'll call on Ashley Winstead to present for the Senior Services Department.
Good afternoon. Nash County Senior Services is requesting $150,000 for architectural services to begin on the Nash Senior Center expansion. In 2008, what was then Oakley Architectural Services, they completed a Nash County utilization study for the county courthouse, sheriff's department facility, and the senior center. It was recommended to expand the center by 7,500 square feet, which would essentially double the size of the building. During the most recent national accreditation achievement, one of the suggestions was for the future to include to pursue center expansions for plans of 7,500 square feet, which is needed to add and maintain programs. As you know, national accreditation is part of the process to secure senior center funding, so this request would be looked at in the 5-year plan. The architectural plan and renovation will address the current space constraints. Some of those examples would include our computer class now that we have that's taught by Nash Community Colleges is often interrupted due to staff offices in our copy room. We have a foot care clinic that a nurse and a client often sit in that's in a closet. And we also have staff that are sharing spaces that are open to our public, so our library has now turned into staff spacing. It would also allow for additional programs and services to be provided. Currently, right now, we're having to limit programs due to sharing of these spaces. Some of these programs include our cards, educational programs, and our support groups. It also would include space for our joint department with Parks and Rec to allow for their staff to join us in our building, and it would also allow for them to have programming. Currently, they do not have a closed area, so they're having to utilize the schools. So this would give them an opportunity to use our building for their programming as well. Any questions?
Tell me again what the $150,000 is.
That would be for the architectural design, to see what was needed to best move forward for that expansion.
Any more questions for Ashley?
And the intent would be, we just adding on the land we have there.
Correct.
The
We've
land
already
we bought
purchased.
A few years ago.
Yes, sir.
That's on page 19.
Yes, sir, about halfway down, page 19.
Where it says Ashley Winston Senior Services.
Okay, I see.
So
I see.
currently,
I see.
grant funds can't be used for new construction, so things that would need to be purchased for the expansion could be using grant funds to be utilized.
Any more questions? Thank you. I'd like to ask for Thomas Gillespie to come and speak about Parks and Recreation and Parks Maintenance.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have several projects we identified for recreation and parks maintenance. The first project that we are requesting for CIP fiscal year 23 is the installation of security cameras at all of our county parks. As you may know, in the past, we've received some vandalism at our parks in Spring Hope and Red Oak. So Red Oak has took the initiative. The town of Red Oak has purchased the cameras already for Ennis Park. So if we could get, think about getting cameras for Miracle Park, Spring Hope Community Park, Bailey Middlesex Park, and Glover Park, this would assist with us improving public safety and protecting our public, and also reduce criminal behavior and vandalism and drug usage at our county parks. So the estimated cost that we received was $12,000 for that project for the security cameras.
Is that through the company that currently provides cameras for our county property?
No, we received a quote from Sandy, got me a quote, but the lowest quote that we received was from Bun Security Cameras.
Who did Red Oak use, Thomas, you know?
Bun.
Bun.
Does the $12,000 include any of the ongoing costs associated with the monitoring?
No, because I think we don't have any access for the Wi-Fi at all the parks at the moment. But from what Mr. Bunn was saying, I don't think it'll be an additional cost for that. So we may have to, it may go up if he allow us to get another quote in fiscal year 23, but $12,000 is what he gave us for us to place the cameras strategically around the park buildings.
And you have a monitor inside that you can go back and pull up recordings on?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have to have Wi-Fi at the parks for us to
For us
access it on our phone.
Remote do it, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. But you can actually,
He'll record it on that, he's gonna have a monitor inside somewhere, a
Correct.
box that will record it and
yeah,
hold
you
it so
can go
many
pull it up,
days.
look at what you got, yeah.
Huh?
I said, you can go in there and see
Yeah,
what's
and look
happening.
at what you got, that's
Yeah.
right.
Just won't be able to do it remote.
Correct. All right.
Or do we have in the ARP money, do we have Wi-Fi going in all of those parts you're doing this in?
Patsy can answer that question better than I can.
Well, actually, we just have money set aside for it, for the broadband, and so hopefully part of that would, in addition to being matched for grants, that it would help, but that, you may be talking about the 900,000.
I'm talking about the CARES
Right,
Act money.
okay.
CARES Act money, I used the wrong word.
I do not believe we have it set aside for that right now. Through our CV grant, we are getting some Wi-Fi at some of the parks.
That's the grant I'm talking about.
Okay, yes, we do. That's only eligible, we're only eligible to use that in certain census tracts. and
I recall that now.
municipalities based
That
on
probably
their
doesn't match up too well with what he just named.
Right. Some of the other parks would need county funding likely.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Any
Or
other,
ARP funding or something like that.
any other questions on that project?
In some parts.
All right. Moving on, the next project that we identified is for park maintenance. We are looking at replacing two 60-inch Toro lawnmowers that we inherited from Glover, the town of Nashville, when we completed the merger. Those lawnmowers are 10-plus years old, and over the past couple of years, we have been constantly replacing different parts on those lawnmowers. During our growing season, those lawnmowers are remaining at Wallett's Engine. getting repair. So we are looking at replacing those 2 lawnmowers, and we received a quote for $15,000 per lawnmower to replace those lawnmowers. So if approved, we would just put those old lawnmowers on Gov Deals. Any questions? All right. The next project we identified was improvement of the parking lot at Miracle Park. So currently, that parking lot is gravel. By paving this parking lot, we would reduce the maintenance on the parking lot and the driveway area. It would also create a more professional look for the first owned county park. As you know, once you enter a park, the parking lot is one of the first areas that the citizens see when entering the park. So that total project cost approximately is $125,000.
Coming out of grant money or the regular county budget?
For paving the parking lot at Miracle Park? No grant money. We are requesting local funding for this project.
That covers what we have now, but not what we have proposed in the Partif grant.
Yeah, that covers the 7,000 square yards for phase 1.
That we're currently using.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. Another project we identified was adding a picnic shelter at Miracle Park. Currently, we have 4 picnic shelters near the park. We want to add this additional shelter near the basketball courts at Miracle Park. By adding this additional shelter, it will provide a shading structure near our outdoor basketball courts for when those guys are playing basketball. And it can also create another space for hosting picnics, gathering with friends, and watching your children while they enjoy the leisure activities. The approximate cost for that project is $25,000. Questions? All right. So the final project that we are requesting, we want to add bleachers at Miracle Park on the baseball fields. Currently, there are no bleachers at Miracle Park on the baseball fields, so we're looking at adding 2 bleachers per field. So that's 8 bleachers that would be at Miracle Park. However, we also want to replace the wood bleachers that are currently at Spring Hope Community Park. By replacing those bleachers, we'll have a more safer, more economical, and easier to maintain aluminum bleacher, which aluminum bleachers are now the standard at all ballparks instead of the wood structure. And the total approximate cost for that is $19,200 for 12 sets of bleachers.
Any questions for Thomas?
Thomas, so that's 8 at Miracle Park and 4 at Spring Hope?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Here's this question here on maintenance. What's the possibility of grant money
for the paving of the parking lot, or which project?
Maintenance. Now, you already answered about the parking lot. I was wondering some of the others.
We can look into some grant funding at the moment. I haven't identified any grants, but I can do some research on that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, board members, if you'll turn to page 22, we'll go ahead and get started with the department heads' presentations of new position requests and reclassification requests for staff. And we will start with Sandy Vick with our MIS department.
Hello again.
Hello.
Thank you, that helped. So I am requesting 1 position, an information technology specialist, grade 71. This is an entry-level position and provides help desk support and assists in other areas as needed. To give you a little history, about spring of 2017, an MIS staff member resigned to take a position in another county. A hiring freeze was placed on that vacant position, and it became permanently frozen or eliminated with the next budget year. Decreasing the MIS staff by one created hardship for an already stressed staff, as the duties of that vacancy had to be distributed among the rest of the MIS staff. In preparation for my position request today, or for this coming year, I asked HR to provide me with detailed information on Nash County staffing increases since 2017. Thank you to Annis and Kirkland, who did an outstanding job producing very detailed information. From the data that Annis provided, I eliminated all the positions for which MIS does not provide support. For example, we don't provide any kind of support services for Board of Election, their election workers that they hire on a temporary basis. And some Parks and Recreation part-time workers we also don't support. With the remaining MIS-supported employees, I was able to determine that Nash County did not increase MIS-supported staff in 2017. But since 2018, we have added 176 new MIS-supported positions. Each time we add a new employee, not only does MIS provide support to the employee, but it also increases the number of devices that we support from anywhere from 1 device to 5. These include computers, desk phones, cell phones, laptops, iPads, etc. Out of the 176 new positions added since 2017, none were MIS positions. MIS staff are overwhelmed with the number of support tickets and lack of staff to provide timely service to our customers, the Nash County employees. Not only does this impact the Nash County employees, but in some cases, it impacts the employees' ability to provide the best service to our Nash County citizens. Reinstating our frozen position puts MIS staffing back to where it was in 2017. It doesn't take into consideration the 176 new positions added since, the increase in supported devices, nor the positions that will be added this year. But it will help. I appreciate your consideration, and anything you can do is always appreciated. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I think we should have talked about this a little bit. In Commissioners, if you'll turn to page 26, we tried to provide you with some history of full-time positions, new full-time positions to the county. So I'm not sure, Annison, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I heard you mention election workers and part-time staff for Parks and Recreation.
Right. Anything that we did not do anything with. Now, we also serve part-time people. It's not just full-time staff that we serve, we also serve part-time. So I eliminated anybody from the data that Annison provided and took out anybody that we don't do anything for. Now, sometimes all we do is email, but we still have to support that email.
That's not the part we're worried about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We don't think the 176 is anywhere near accurate, but we're gonna check it. She's gonna check into that.
Yeah, we'll look
We hadn't
into that.
added 30 employees a year for the last 5 years.
It varied. It wasn't 30 every single year, but the numbers that I came up with, and I tried to be very accurate, was 176 over that time frame.
Okay, we'll look into it some more.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Sandy? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5 years.
Okay. And again, the sheriff is going to be with us in the morning, so we'll skip down to Scott Rogers. And Board Scott's positions start at the top of page 23.
So at the top of that page there, the first section you see under my name is in relation to our 911 center. I'd like to narrow your focus, if I could, to the middle line. On that middle line, we are requesting 2 new positions in the 911 center. The last time that we increased our shift size in 911 was in 2008. We went to 5 people at that time. And in 2014, we actually did another request to move to 6 people based on call volume. It takes 4 people, of course, to add one to a shift because we have 4 shifts in there. At that time, you were kind enough to give us 2 positions, which we have used since that time as peak time positions. They work during the busiest hours, but again, we can still only have 4.5 or 5.5 people on shift at a time, if you will. In 2008, when we added those folks, we had about 54,000 calls for service per year. In 2021, we had 82,000 calls for service, which is a pretty significant increase. Another increase that we're seeing that puts a lot of pressure on the 911 center is law enforcement activity. There have been a lot of changes in law enforcement in Nash County over the last few years. To give you an example, in 2014, our dispatchers serviced 7,266 traffic stops. In 2021, they did 11,820 traffic stops. So it's a significant increase in the work that they're doing. We have done a study based on national standards and based on the population, call volume, and services provided. We really should be at 6.3 employees per shift. We're willing to forego to 0.3, so 6 is what we're really after on the shift. So that is our major request for 911, is to utilize the 2 peak time people we have now and add 2 additional to make it 6 per shift. The other 2 items that you see, or lines that you see, are basically to be addressed with the pay study. There were some changes to the structure, if you will, within the center we'd like to make, but they will be addressed by the pay study, and whatever the pay study recommends is a good answer for me. The only other item you'll see in my presentation is under EMS, and that, of course, is an estimated cost for 6 months of adding an additional shift, which we've been discussing for quite some time. We're still working in a small work group to decide the best options for that. So I'm sure more information will be presented to you forthcoming. Any questions for me?
Any questions? All right, thank you, sir. I'd like to call on Adam Tyson with Planning.
You'll see that there is one position request for the planning department in your proposal. The current planning staff consists of a planner, Tommy Jones, senior planner, Adam Culpepper, and planning director, myself. We 3 are responsible for managing all planning board cases, board of adjustment cases, all zoning site plan approvals, major and minor subdivisions, stormwater permits, floodplain reviews, road sign orders, and then all citizen and developer inquiries and consultations. As the housing market has intensified, so has the number of planning board cases, which of course the board is aware of because a lot of those proceed to you for public hearings. They are primarily residential rezonings and minor subdivision requests. For many years, that number was very stable in about the 20 range per year. In 2018, we had 24 planning board cases. 2019 and 2020, we had 29 planning board cases. But in 2021, that more than doubled with 64 planning board cases. And of course, those cases, obviously we prepare a report and maps, but those cases also involve a lot more work behind the scenes. They have to be presented 3 times a month to our technical review committee, the planning board, and then to the board of commissioners. We have to coordinate revisions with the developer and their design professionals. We have to provide public notices in the forms of letters, newspaper ads, and posted signs on the property. And then once you see that subdivision, it's in a very preliminary, simplistic sketch plan form. It comes back to our office at least 2 more times, once as a preliminary plat with the engineering details, and then as a final plat that we ensure that it was constructed the way it was proposed. As that number of cases has intensified, I have covered that gap with some very long hours at night and over the weekends. I've seen the sun come up a handful of times over the last year, or I would have if I had a window. And that's all right, because we, as staff, we're expected to be the most educated and prepared person in the room for all of those planning board meetings and board of commissioner meetings, and we're committed to doing that. But that's not going to be sustainable in the long run if the housing market continues on the trajectory it is for now. So the request is for a planner position. That would allow our existing planner, Tommy Jones, to take a more active role in helping manage our major subdivisions and provide a little assistance at the planning board level. The planning staff has not grown in the 14 years that I've been with the department. So it is a rare occurrence that we would expand that staff. But that's my request, and I appreciate your consideration.
Any questions for Adam?
One question, Adam.
Okay.
How many vacant inspector positions do you have currently?
We have one full-time and one part-time, and the advertising window for those closed last night, and so we received the applicants this morning for both those positions.
And you feel, I'm noticing you got them up to 26, 28 inspections a day, which is
I think that
extremely high.
it is high, but we're getting the job done. I think with the filling of those two positions, I would hesitate to ask for another inspector at this time until we see what that number goes down to when we refill those positions. Because when they were filled, we had very manageable caseloads per inspector.
Okay. So your need for this position, in your opinion, is much worse than your need for another inspector? Okay.
And I don't think we'll really know if we need another inspector until we get those positions filled.
Correct.
But I know I need the planner that I'm asking for.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Andy with Economic Development.
Well, in addition to housing activity, I think you know our economic development activity has drastically increased. So the reason for this request, in November 2017, Susan Phelps was hired as a retail economic developer, Nash County, for Nash County, with a focus on small business and retail recruitment for the county's rural towns. Of course, at that time, Nash was still with Carolina's Gateway Partnership, but since 2020, the county, of course, hired an economic development director and created a full-time service economic development department with a focus on industrial, commercial, and retail recruitment. The department also focuses on business retention and expansion and has established an extensive marketing campaign. The department also has added an administrative assistant in March 2020. And so Susan's role and duties have changed drastically, as I think we all can have experienced and can agree, to incorporate all aspects of economic development, and a new job position and description should reflect those duties and align with the scope of work expected from a full-service economic development department. So that's my request today.
Any questions for Andy?
To make sure the board understands, and I understand as part of the board, so this is not a request for a new position, it's just a reclassification of Susan's position?
Yeah, from a retail developer to a economic development manager. That would be her title.
And you want to do that in the next budget year?
Correct.
Is what the request is?
Yes.
We all got that? Okay.
Okay.
Just looks unusual to have that on.
In the mix with new positions.
Correct. I got it.
I'll ask for a new position next year.
See what you did?
I have a tendency to do things like that from time to time.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Mr. Hill?
Ms. Richardson would like you, you got this thing moving.
I scared him that they'd have to come back tomorrow.
Yeah. I have here a request. Actually, it came to me, as Ms. Schatzner knows, and in our budget meeting with Mrs. Wood, we talked about first of all, producing a bare bones budget with no increases, and then we looked at real needs, and I actually had 4 requested nursing, beginning level nurses, immediately cut it to half, but we really do, after doing a personnel study, looking at both our offices, we're looking at a request for 2 beginning level additional nurses, one in our Rocky Mount office and one in our Nashville office. When I start to look at appointments that are being postponed, looking at cancellations of appointments, looking at different kinds of actual, they cause some problems with appointments coming in where when we don't have enough beginning level nurses to be able to take whatever appointments are coming in, whether they're well baby, whether they're family planning or maternity. We're just seeing a lot more patients come in. I realize we've had the impact of COVID for the last couple of years, so we have to separate that and look at just routine types of caseload appointments and demand. After looking at that, I really do think we could use a beginning level nurse in each department, which would mean a total of 2 nurses at about $49,000, the salary right at $50,000 a piece, with the fringe benefits coming out to $141,000 for the 2 nurses. That's my request for 2 additional nurses, one in Rocky Mount office and one in Nashville. Take up some of the slack, hopefully meet some of the appointments on a more expedient basis instead of having to continually reschedule patients to come in at a later time. I think we can be more efficient. We've done extremely well when I look at Medicaid reimbursement for many of these patients. We are the home for many patients. We used to say we did 50% of all prenatal care in Nash County. And you look at all the OBGYNs and we do it, I'd say it's more like 40% now, but there's still a lot of prenatal care that we are the home. There are probably 1,000 Nash County deliveries, there are 1,500 or 1,600 at the hospital, but about 1,000 Nash County maternity patients a year, of which we see probably right at 350 to 400 in both offices. Having said that, that's my request for 2 additional nurses, beginning level nurses, 1 in each office, and if that request can't be met, we'll continue to do the very best we can and continue to move on and try to see the patients the most efficient way possible.
Any questions for Mr. Hill?
Bill, are all your nurses' positions filled at the current time?
Well, you know, that's the very thing we talked about too. They're not, the beginning level nurses are, we don't have many at that level. But that was the first thing I said. Let's fill our vacancies first before we look at additional nurses. But we've made a lot of progress. We talked about that also in our budget meeting last week with the county manager and finance director, talked about the progress that we have made in just putting some promoting some supervisory level folks. But and we have filled most of those positions, but we still have a couple. Attrition through retirement has been an issue, and quite frankly, recruitment as DSS has very much seen, has really been, recruitment and retainment has been an issue at the department. It really has. But it's not just us. I mean, hospital, a lot of places are feeling this, especially in healthcare. I guess COVID has knocked a lot out of the workforce, either just for whatever reason, but we are working on that vacancy level, getting the vacancies filled before we look to hire additional nurses. So we've got a few still vacant positions. And we've got some coming up. We've got a retirement or 2 coming up. We've got some already budgeted retirements for next year, fiscal year. So we certainly do have to look at filling the vacancies before we commit to hiring more people.
Well, let's just project these 2 are approved by the board. Do you think you would be able to fill them in the next year, and plus what you've already got?
I do think we could. We've made a more committed effort to meeting on a more regular basis, small personnel group of 3 or 4,
Right.
and saying, where are we now? we're going to meet again next week. How much progress are we going to say we've made next week? And meeting again the next week to look at where we are. So forcing our people to interview, get the people in, and to answer your questions, I think we'll have a little better luck at finding beginning level nurses that don't even require any public health experience, picking them up out of the community college, picking them up with very little experience, and training them ourselves. So I do think we'd have a little better luck at bringing on beginning level nurses.
Is it not true that probably in the past, when you lost a person, you may not have re-asked for that nurse's position, therefore it's not what it was at one time in the past?
That is true. I have been reluctant. It is a soft word to use, hesitant, reluctant to just quickly add. I don't know the last time I've asked for new positions. I can't remember asking for new positions.
Well, I just know myself you have eliminated quite a few. And
We
it
did
doesn't
at one
concern me
time.
that you've asked for new positions at all, because we're really just giving you back what you had, I think.
That's right. I would suspect our staff numbers are probably lower than they were 5 years ago. Now, having said that, how do you go through COVID for the past 2 years and add thousands of tests and thousands of vaccinations? Well, part of the way we've done that, we've had to curtail some of our other activities. Obviously, you can't curtail an STD patient. You can't curtail a maternity patient and some of the others. But we have had a lot of help from the National Guard coming in, some auxiliary help that's really meant a lot. We've had a lot of the other private providers doing testing, hospital doing testing. They're doing all the treatment. So we've had a lot of assistance, not to mention the emergency services that have come to our rescue on all these clinics to help the organization and that kind of thing.
Moving forward, would you anticipate when you have a person to retire, you would go ahead and fill that position?
I do, and we are looking at some known retirements and looking at them in the budget. We know, we've asked our folks, already know which ones are retiring and scheduled to retire in the next fiscal year, and the ones that are going to retire this year, and go ahead and start to fill those positions. That's right.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, sir. And it's one thing to save money, but I realize where you're going with this. I mean, you know, it felt good to save money. It felt good every year to have lapse funds in the budget.
Yes,
But there gets a point of diminishing returns when you don't have the people to.
I think you might be there, sir.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
And next, we have an item for Veteran Services, and I'll call on Anthony Rogers.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, my name is Anthony Rogers. I'm the Director of Nash County for Veteran Services. I do want to thank everybody for the opportunity just to be here, and also the opportunity to be the Veteran Service Officer for Nash County. Today, I'm requesting
Sir, it works both ways. We thank you for taking that position.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
If I could add, he's one of our newest department heads in Nash County, and we very much appreciate what he's doing.
Thank you. So Veteran Services, we're requesting an Officer Assistant 4. This is a new position. I will say in the past, or currently right now, we're using a temp from Express. In the past, we have used interns from a few colleges, I think ECU and UNCG, but we're hoping that we can fill that position, a full-time position. The total salary and benefits is $47,356. It would be very beneficial. The assistants help with us with the phone calls and helping with walk-ins, because a lot of times we have to stop what we're doing to assist that veteran. But if we have a full-time assistant, we won't have to retrain anyone, and we won't have to stop what we're doing. The county has grown. When I arrived, we were helping about 100 people a month. Now we're about 300 a month. That's through emails, phone calls, and just walk-ins. So that is a very necessary position. Phone calls, about 20, 30 phone calls a day, sometimes more. And again, the walk-ins are very, not overwhelming. I don't want to use the word overwhelming, but we're growing. Nash County is growing. And I will say also, we have 54 five-star Google reviews, and that's drawing people from other counties also, just because of the service they're receiving in our county. So they really appreciate what we're doing for the county. So I did want to make that note.
Any questions for Mr. Rogers?
Mr. Rogers, does this take you from a what we've known a two-person department to a three-person department?
Yes, sir.
So you would still have the temp person?
We're gonna eliminate the temp person, and the temps, we're asking for a replacement for the temp to be a full-time.
Make it total of 3, yeah, making the temp a full-time county position.
So it's 2 plus the temp now?
Right.
Okay.
Well-
I didn't realize that.
Your other position, has it been filled
It
yet?
hasn't been filled. We have interview process starting next week
he's
for the
still up there.
other veteran service officer position.
Okay, so the position that Mr. Hill asked for a couple of months ago and changed
Has not
the,
been
has not been filled?
Correct.
Okay, that's got to be straight, I understand now.
We've
Yes,
got
sir.
3 of the 6, don't we, Mr. Rogers, already scheduled to interview.
Yes, sir. We have 3 interviews scheduled
Got
next week.
So we're hoping to get 5, I believe.
Yes, sir.
scheduled for next week. So all this is not new money, because you've been paying a temp.
Correct,
That's right.
correct.
Any other questions?
The veteran service is not a department of its own, it comes under,
Oh, it is a department of something,
it is,
but it falls under Human Services
Umbrella.
umbrella, which is Mr. Hill.
will have the department of its own, which is under that.
It is a department of its own, just like social services is.
In some counties, it falls
I
under
thought we merged the two,
Sure.
health and social service were merged.
I'll let you explain it.
We have a consolidated human services department that
Yeah.
includes public health, Department of Social Services, and Veteran Services. So the Human Services Department is the umbrella over those departments, but they still function as independent departments.
Well, I thought when we merged, back when we did it.
I think it's just how you look at it. I mean, it's kind of like our Recreation and Senior Services Department. They work together on special projects, but they're still departments.
Fred, if you'll remember the statute change that allowed us to have
Yeah,
one of 3 options.
I do remember that.
Okay, well, we
It
took the
said
option.
merging them together,
Right.
and
Kind of,
I
sort of,
could
but not
see,
really.
I could see them being a subdivision of the merger. But I don't see them being a separate department.
Well,
But that's to be, don't worry about it.
Okay? Any other questions for Mr. Rogers?
I just have one comment to make. I would imagine that office, changing it from a temp position to an office assistant position permanent, it'll also give that person the ability to build a solid relationship with our veterans, and they'll get used to him or her and vice versa, so.
Yes, ma'am. That is a great point. Right now, we have a Ms. Cutler from the temp agency, and a lot of veterans make a lot of good compliments because of the work she's doing. She's very professional. She does a great job answering the phone, great job scheduling appointments, and even assisting the veterans when they come in. We do have a lot of elderly veterans that we're assisting, but she's doing a wonderful job, and a familiar face is great for the veterans to see.
Mr. Rogers, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, you might have. If you did, I apologize, but that person is also cross-trained with environmental health. So, did you mention that?
I did not.
Okay.
That's
That
great.
management support person is cross-trained with our environmental health and in the planning area for being able to relieve that person in a phone calls that roll over. So we're in hopes we have someone to be able to stand in when our support person in environmental health is out. Mr. Tyson and I have worked on that quite a bit, and I appreciate his support on that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next, I'd like to call on Thomas Gillespie to talk about parks maintenance and parks and recreation.
Thought he'd already been a,
Well, oh, no, I'm sorry, Thomas. You know what I just did. I'm sorry, Amy. I need to call on Amy Hamlet-Pridgeon for our Social Services Department. You were just gonna jump and go, weren't you?
you halfway up there.
He's like, I'm not coming back in the morning. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're
I was
waiting
just
for her to pass them out? Okay.
I brought Shay Neal today, our assistant, our deputy director, to just provide basically assistance. I think we talked a lot the last time we met about some of the personnel issues or personnel matters that we have. And some of the things just to review what we talked about at the last meeting, we talked about how programs have become increasingly more complex over the past 20 years. You can't hear me, correct?
I think the mic is more for our video, but you're just going to have to project really good in this
Okay.
room. I'm sorry.
Okay. We talked about our programs and how they've become increasingly more complex over the past 20 years. We talked a lot about our department staffing levels and how we have only had 3 positions, an increase in 3 positions since 2002. Our current staff are inexperienced. We have 55% of our income maintenance staff that have less than 2 years' experience in their current position. And then we have, can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. 32 of 58 of our income maintenance staff have less than 2 years of experience. Our supervisor staff ratios make it difficult to monitor and support staff. We have excessive caseloads, and we lack adequate staff development to address our staff training requirements. And then COVID just merely amplified the existing conditions and further increased the workload size and the stress levels. So, that's a good idea, Shay. I didn't even realize we hadn't started. Okay. And I know you can't see it very well, probably not even on your own, but Nash County ranks 26th in the number of Medicaid participants in the state of North Carolina, and then Wilson County follows right behind it. I also included just a portion of one of our Deer County Director letters, and it just talks about all the changes that have come about since the implementation of NC-FAST with affordable care. It talks a lot about the timeliness requirements, accuracy requirements that are required for Medicaid, as well as food and nutrition. And then the next slide is basically, and I think you received a copy of this in February that we provided to you. It's basically our county budget estimates is provided by the state, and it just kind of lets us know what we need to plan for the future. One of the things that it includes, and I think with the eligibility and audits, it talks about need for additional staffing to be able to survive the audits. Just to be able to process the information, to be able to get everything done timely. Another thing that's not even included here would be like Medicaid expansion, and obviously that hadn't come to pass, but is part of legislation that could be a potential for the year, so something we would need to consider. So the next thing, and if you think of something, feel free to, okay. So the next thing would be reviewing staffing levels. What we did was consider 4 counties. It makes it really difficult due to the programs, their specific factors and reporting methodology. There's direct comparisons from county to county, so it just makes it very difficult to compare those counties. Medicaid cases are reported by counties. That's actually a broad measure that can be used to compare the demand for services and county staffing levels. I think I just indicated that we're 26 in the state, and with the cases, or with the counties that we considered were Brunswick, Craven, Rockingham, and Wilson. And although we're not always head-to-head with population, we are head-to-head or close when it comes to the number of Medicaid participants in those counties. So those counties range from 26,000 to 30,590, and actually Brunswick was, as you can see, the one that had 30,590. So looking at the ratio of Medicaid cases to staff from those counties range from 309 to 518. So the average I basically computed it would be 391. And looking at that, it would indicate or suggest that we would likely need 19 positions. However, we're not going to request 19 positions. And as you can see, what positions we do have listed. Okay. The first would be an income maintenance supervisor 2 in Family and Children's Medicaid. And
Then we have 2 income maintenance, caseworker 2 in adult services, and those were actually reallocated to cover some legislative changes recently that we had with adult in-home special assistance and with our guardianship cases. So we're actually trying to look to replace those 2 positions to be able to assist with our adult intake and energy services. We're requesting 3 staff development specialists, and that's to provide staff training. 1 income maintenance caseworker, 3 in adult Medicaid to process our long-term care. 1 income maintenance supervisor in food nutrition, and 1 income maintenance caseworker, 2 in food and nutrition. And then I have a little note that 2 of our agencies' current vacancies are in an area where additional positions have been requested, but neither of those positions have been vacated long. They haven't been ongoing. And actually, I'll just take a moment to say last year when the commissioners allowed us to develop a program manager, we put several positions together and we're able to implement 2 program managers. So we have really, our plan to be able to hire more effectively has paid off. We are hopefully, after today, we're getting ready to offer 3 positions, but we'll be down to 9 vacancies, and none of those vacancies are ongoing. So we are having to hire new staff that have no experience, but we are better able to fill those positions now that we have more of a level of management to be able to actually interview and to be able to follow through. And of course, COVID did impact for a while being able to pull people in the office, well, for people to even apply for some positions. Okay.
And the reason we're asking for 2 supervisor positions is because of the number of workers in Family and Children's Medicaid as well as in food and nutrition. There are so many workers in those departments currently with 1 supervisor that supervisor doesn't have adequate time to spend training and helping those workers get where they need to be and ensure that errors aren't being made, which of course costs the county more money. So our intent is to divide the units into 2 smaller groups so that there will be more supervisor staff ratio. Sorry, I just did that.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's fine. And this very basic chart, so we just kind of took all the little boxes away and put the 18, but before we had 1 supervisor, and now what we're trying to do is make 2. So later in the presentation, we'll be going over reclassifications because the IMC, or Income Maintenance Supervisor 3, would actually now be a 2, so that we could have 2. And that probably makes no sense, so I apologize. But that was what we're trying to do, is make it smaller. And then the next page, I think, our family services, we're requesting 2 positions with family services, or in our adult intake, and that would be to process energy applications and to back up food nutrition as well as Medicaid. And then staff development would be for training, and that would be used across the agency for all of our programs, but mostly with income maintenance programs, eligibility programs, food nutrition, Medicaid. And then adult Medicaid, I think I indicated earlier that we need a long-term care worker. We've been able to recently separate, and actually we have an adult Medicaid supervisor position. Is still posted or it closed? Okay, just closed. So we're getting ready to interview for that. Is it tomorrow? Tomorrow. So hopefully that will help some in that area. And then with food and nutrition, again, we had 1 supervisor, 3. We're trying to have 2 supervisors, and then we were trying to add a worker to help with the caseload size. They're carrying right at 900, over 900 cases each. So hopefully that will eliminate a little bit of that. The reclasses are what I just showed you. You can click again, yeah. So it shows the next one, so that there's 2 supervisors. They would go from a 3 to a 2. And then our last, and same with Medicaid. And then finally, the last would be a request for a salary adjustment, and that is basically for our low-income energy assistance contract workers, and that would just bring them up to par with what the other workers at that salary grade make. And we could put a lot more benefits of, if we were approved, the positions, but additional supervisors would greatly increase the support and oversight provided to our caseworkers. Staff development would obviously be better equipped to address training needs, to be able to assist with the audit processes, to be able to provide quality assurance monitoring, and to prevent county responsible paybacks. And our goal would be to gradually reduce turnover by reducing our caseload sizes. And then just for future consideration, we would like to start small. We know we have people that would need to be trained. It takes a while to train. We can't train overnight. Some of the programs take over a year just to learn part of their positions. So we recognize that in the future, this isn't going to totally reduce our caseload sizes. And so as we are able to reduce them, then we would like to make sure we have the support of additional, first have additional caseworkers, lead workers, and supervisors to be able to maintain that. Did you have anything? No. Any questions?
Any questions for Amy?
I don't know what to ask, but I honestly don't understand any of this, to be honest with you.
It's complex.
Is all this local money?
No, sir. I
Can I
think
look at this later and identify what is local money?
if you look in the far right corner where the 2239 is,
Yeah.
we get reimbursement for, and so I think Donna could probably best explain it, but we do get reimbursement. So the 239,000, I can't see in the dark, would be,
Reimbursement.
right.
Right, I think of the 500, or 541,000 of increases, 239,000 is the revenue offset to that. So it's a little bit less than half of funding. And each position would have a different, maybe it's, again, I don't know, maybe an average of 35 to 40% of that position could be offset with revenue, the positions that are requested.
And the capital expense is all on the county?
Yes, well, no, part of that as well, that's furniture that they would want to add offices, to furnish an office for those positions.
Do we have room within the building to put these people?
Yes, sir. We're looking to transform one of our conference rooms, put cubicles in there, and move some of our other workers who don't have to see clients into those, into the conference room so that we can utilize their offices for new positions.
And have we ever been at this staffing level before, if we were to approve these 14? Or is this more than we would ever have had?
Staff?
Yes,
Staff. I think the most staff we've ever had is what we have now, 170
170. So this would-
overall.
This would carry it to 184.
That would be correct. No, it would be, no, we're only 9. It would be 179. Unless you're counting part-time, which are temporary.
Well, I just see 14 positions in this line. I know you said something up front, but I've already forgot.
We requested 9 new positions,
And some of these
2
are
reclassifications.
like-
Reclass, okay, I got
Yes,
it,
sir.
I got it.
So the net cost, our outlay here would be the 578 less the 239,
Yes, sir.
338,000.
Correct.
Any other questions for Amy?
Do you have any problem recruiting and filling these positions?
Hopefully not.
I feel like most of them will be,
Brand new, I think a lot
well,
of.
the supervisors will come from internal that we already have, or from another surrounding agency with experience is what we're hoping for. Our staff development, I feel like we'll be able to fill internally, which of course creates other vacancies, but that's generally, we like to hire from within if possible.
For us to have 170 staff and be down to 9 vacancies, I think that's really good. And actually, several of those have just occurred, so we would have even fewer, that's true, would be effective April 1st. So we've actually done a really good job. We've interviewed quite a bit. We've had a lot of no-shows, but we've had a lot of people come too. We're actually have interviewed numerous people, even through QVC, as of late, that lost their positions. And I think there's a lot of potential to be able to hire people within our community who are looking for work and who want to work and who are diligent about working. To me, since before COVID, I think we're doing way better with being able to hire. And I think part of that was us being able to get program managers in place. And so I would like to thank the board for helping us do that last year, because it has truly helped us come a long way. It is still a struggle. I think staff are stressed. We're stressed but overall, to me, it is looking up as far as being able to hire and move forward. But just establishing that ground, that stability with staff development and supervision, I think it'll carry us a lot farther.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to call on Thomas Gillespie.
All righty, I'm back. I'm here requesting 2 full-time park maintenance specialist positions to assist with park facilities. Both of these positions will assist with the operation and maintenance of county parks and athletic fields. The positions will prepare the athletic fields, assist with mowing, trimming, and other landscaping duties. They will also perform other grounds and parks facility care duties as assigned. Currently, we have 3 full-time park maintenance employees. We have a parks manager and 2 parks maintenance specialists. A parks manager and 2 park maintenance specialists currently.
No, I mean all of it again.
I'm sorry. I'm requesting 2 full-time park maintenance specialist positions for our park maintenance department. They will assist with the preparation of athletic fields, mowing, trimming, and other landscaping duties in the county. They will also perform other grounds and park facility care duties as assigned. We currently have 3 full-time maintenance positions, parks manager and 2 park maintenance specialists. So when in season, I think each park could have an employee present at the 3 major parks, which I consider Ennis Park, Glover Park, and Miracle Park. So I think we could have 1 employee providing service at those parks, and the 2 additional employees would cover Spring Hope, Bailey, Castalia, and the elementary schools that we use once we're in season. Our Parks Maintenance Department, they are responsible for approximately 126 acres of parkland within the county and 6 parks. They are responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of 18 baseball and softball fields, 5 soccer fields, playgrounds, and walking trails, and the concessions and restroom park buildings throughout the county park. It's been tough over the past couple of years, especially with the additional acreage that's been those guys have been responsible for, but we've been doing a good job. But the main thing that I've always heard from my staff is that we need help. We have some part-time employees that help us out as well, but they work roughly between 20 to 25 hours a week. But it's hard covering all the acreage, especially driving throughout the county. And once we're really going, those guys are working on the weekends as well for the tournaments that we provide throughout the county. And during the week when we have soccer and baseball going on, once we're in season, they may provide field preparation for 10-plus fields throughout the county from Bailey all the way to Red Oak while still having to cut grass.
I would suspect you probably don't have much problem filling these positions, do you, or do you?
The part-time positions?
No, your full-time maintenance positions.
Well, those guys, we haven't really had to fill a position, but since 2018, I think. But
okay.
I'm pretty sure once we put it out, that we'll definitely get some qualified candidates.
Right, I would sure think so.
Yeah.
As many people as in that, field, and in fact, the benefits that the county has.
Yeah.
And I would think none of them have any benefits, probably working where they are now.
Yeah, but any help is appreciated. Those guys, I mean, they do a great job, but they need help. We don't want to overwork them.
We don't.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, they work once we're in season, they work 6 to 7 days a week on those tournaments. All righty. Any other questions on those 2 full-time park maintenance positions?
Is there, I don't remember where you did have some. You were doing replacement mowers. Do you have enough equipment to add these people?
We do. We have 6 mowers because we have the part-time guys that work with us as well.
Gotcha.
We have 1 mower in the shop right now, so I think we have enough mowers. We would love the help and the mowers, but if we had to choose one, we'd take the help. We would love the help and the mowers.
I did it again, didn't I?
Any other questions for Thomas?
All right, the next position that I'm requesting is for the Recreation Division. That is a special events and marketing manager position. And so throughout COVID, our staff has been very creative and implemented a bunch of a variety of special events and non-athletic programs. So majority of the programming in our department is, athletic, whether it's youth athletics or adult athletics. So we want to tap into the other market as far as offering special events and non-athletic programs. So that position would provide those duties and assist with marketing for our department. Some of the programs that we have implemented over the past year where some of the programs that this position would be responsible for would be our outdoor movie nights in our community, the Daddy-Daughter Dance, the Halloween Spooktacular, Winter Wonderland, and a bunch of other creative events that they would come up with. Examples of work for this position that I anticipate include assist with special events put on by other groups at the county parks, design and prepare and print digital marketing materials for our programs and special events. They would represent department at community events, promoting our department and the park offerings. And this position will assist with providing events and programs in the smaller communities throughout the county, such as the Bailey, Castellan, Middlesex, and even the Whitaker's community. And that concludes my report on that position. I entertain any questions.
Thomas, on that position, who's doing all that now?
So it's combined between our different program supervisors that we have currently. So they are offering their athletic program in youth and adult, and also offering other programs for non-athletic wise to the community.
Shouldn't the county have a public information director that handles all public relations for all departments?
Can you repeat that?
Oh.
Can you repeat it?
Oh,
Yeah, if you need to repeat.
he was asking if the county should have a public information officer, public
All
relations officer
Yeah,
for,
handle for all departments.
so we have Jonathan Edwards, who is our communications director. We have our new communications department that handles communications for all the departments, I think primarily except for our sheriff's office handles a lot of their own communications.
Yeah, seems like to me that would be a lot more efficient if we had that one person or that communication department handle all departments, public information they put out.
This position kind of helps pay for itself by creating new revenue or anything like bringing activities to the various areas?
I wouldn't say yes to that answer.
Okay.
This position basically would, so we take your community center, for example. If you want to have an event around here at your community center, this position could assist with your offering different programs here for the citizens in this community. Maybe assist with the special event, the fireworks at Castalia Community Park. Just bringing a different variety, another aspect to our department other than athletics.
Any other questions?
Thomas, does any organization have a daughter granddaddy dance?
That's a good idea. I might need to look into that. Most of it is daddy-daughter dance, and they can bring any, be accompanied by any male family member. So will I look forward to seeing you at the dance this year?
I think my dance partner has outgrown me. Unless you have it in Wilmington, maybe.
All right, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
If the board doesn't mind, I've asked Mr. Boone, he's going to be with us tomorrow on our agenda, so I would like for him to cover his request tomorrow when he's on the agenda. And if we could, just go ahead and turn to page 28, and Annison Kirkland with Human Resources is just going to provide you with a quick update of the classification and pay study. Tomorrow? He had a position. Yeah, he had a position.
Yes.
Yep, it's, well, you just have the PowerPoint that he's going to go through on page 28.
Can everybody hear me pretty well? I don't tend to talk very loud.
If you just continue to project,
Okay, I'll do my best.
and remember my hard stop at 10 after.
Oh, okay. Just give me this right here. I do have just a brief update that was provided to me yesterday by our consultants, the MAG group. And this will sort of let you know a little bit about what the pay study has been all about, and also where we are and where we're headed. We're, I think, getting toward the short rows right now, but there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of data to be analyzed and sorted, and so that's where we are now. But to give you a little information about our project or our study, the goal and the scope of the project was to conduct a comprehensive classification and compensation study for approximately 600 active employees and another 30 vacant positions, and also approximately 200 job classifications. I think there were actually about 220. What this study is designed to do is to capture the current job data from, and I didn't change the slide, I'm sorry about that. What the study is designed to do is to capture the current job data from employees, to ensure internal equity among our employees, to identify any needed market adjustments to the current plan, and to provide an implementation plan that is affordable to the county. What this project or study is not designed to do is to identify and recommend any staffing levels or staffing changes, to reorganize departments or job functions, to evaluate individual employee performance or capabilities. It's not to guarantee any salary increases, and it's also not to recommend any salary decreases. And to just highlight some of the major steps that we have gone through with the pay study, initially there was an exchange of data between the county and our consultants with information like hire dates, promotion dates, salary data on each employee. We confirmed market targets and set up the position benchmarks that would be compared to the other targeted market targets. I'm getting my words twisted up here. Conduct employee orientation sessions. Job questionnaires were completed by employees, and they were completed about a month ago, so They're just getting into reviewing those now. Job analysis and classification review. Complete a market study, and that has been done, and they're analyzing the data currently that they have collected from that market study, and the preparation of a draft and final reports for the study. There is a list of some of the counties and agencies or entities that were used as part of the study. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see these listed up here on the slide. They were based on basically population, the tax valuation, their proximity to us, our peers, our competitors, those kinds of things. So it was a combination of things that provided us with those counties. A summary of the preliminary survey results from the 52 positions that have been compared to the market. Overall, our county is generally competitive in the minimums. Each pay grade has a minimum, a maximum, and a midpoint. As far as the minimums, we're very competitive. When you get up to the top of the grade, at the maximum, we're sort of lagging behind the market. They're going to do further review of that and make recommendations once they've completed their review and analyzed all of the data. 33 of the 52 positions that they surveyed are lagging behind at the maximum, so that's going to be a consideration when they make their recommendation. And the average range width of the market is approximately 60% between the minimum and the maximum, and ours is 52%. So that shows there's a shortfall there as far as how far our ranges go in salaries.
Would you say that again? So, explain that last one again.
For each pay grade, each position has a pay grade. There's a minimum salary and there's a maximum. We start out pretty good with our minimums, but by the time we get to the maximum, we're lagging a little bit. Our salaries are not quite as high as they should go on each grade. But it's not all of them. It was 33 of the 52.
But are you saying that range width, the market shows it should be 60% between low and high? Am I reading that wrong?
According to what they've given me, now I haven't had an in-depth discussion with them, so I'm sort of taking what they presented to me and presenting it to you, and I wish they were here to answer your question. But
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So a given position, if it starts at here, the high range should be 60% more than where it started? Is that what you're saying?
I would have to do a calculation, but that's the base, sort of the basis of it.
And we're at 52?
Right. So
I
we're
didn't
lagging
realize
a little
we had
behind.
that kind of range on a given position.
Right, and I can confirm that for you and shoot you an email or something. And
That's the way I was taking it.
Right.
52% of our employees are at 52% between, am I saying this right, between minimum and maximum. We're sitting at 52 and the average is 60. Closest to maximum, and we're at 52. Is that what they're saying?
I don't know. You said it different than what I said.
Well, I think I was trying to say the same thing. I mean, I don't know.
I think the width from,
Yeah, let them answer the question.
in the market, the distance between the hiring rate, or the minimum we call it, and the maximum is supposed to be a certain range in there.
Right.
And our range is lower than the market average. Most people have a broader range.
I just didn't have any idea there's that much range in there.
Yeah, it's
6% is a
quite
lot.
a bit. I wish I had the salary table to show you, but I don't have it. But I can provide that
Well,
if you.
if you could just clear that up with the managers, you can let us know.
Yes, I'll be glad to. I'll be happy to.
Market range is 6%, we're at 52, which is 8% less than what the range.
Right.
Right.
The range width is what the word he's using there.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with where we are in pay,
Right, but we're only 8% behind
in range.
in range.
In the range, yeah.
Right.
He said it correctly, yeah. We start out good, but we don't finish quite as well when we get to the top of the
So
range.
Anderson,
So I
I'm
think
sorry,
then it
can I
calls
ask a
for
quick
probably-
question?
Yes.
Is this where they're looking at our compression issues? And are they addressing those issues?
They are getting into the point where they're addressing, that's the internal equity portion of it. And so this is just the market data where they've compared us to other counties and actually one city, two cities. That's what this is related to. The compression will come in later as they take it and look at the internal equity. And they're in that discussion now.
Anderson, they've got your slides. Do you mind jumping to your last slide?
Okay. All right. Okay, the next steps, this is where we are. Reviewing the job duties that the employees confirmed by completing the questionnaire. They're currently doing that. They're integrating all the data that they received from the market survey. Once they get all that information together and analyze it, they will come up with a draft report. The date they've given me is hopefully by April the 8th for that. And then a final report will be provided and presented to the commissioners, and they should have that ready before the end of April or by the end of April. Those dates could change. That's the best estimate they could give me.
Any questions for Anderson? And he
Staff
will,
ask a question?
pardon me?
Staff ask a question?
Sure.
So, I thought one of the other steps we plan on taking is having a consultant come back and talk to the department heads, back and talk about internal equity, maybe challenges we have in recruiting, things of that nature. Is that still in the scope of work, or is that been taken up?
It hasn't been taken out. It's certainly a possibility. If you have concerns, if you want to speak with someone from the group, I don't see why we couldn't make that happen.
I think most department heads will stick with it.
Okay. I know we're going to have them address things like difficulty in attracting and retaining employees, the recruitment efforts of some departments. So certainly we can set up something and have those conversations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Anderson?
I got two. On page 30, peers and competitive surveys. Last item, I see you have brought two municipalities in there, which I find a little odd, being we are a county. Why would we have done that?
I didn't bring those in, but the consultants brought those in because they are our competitor and our peer. They're the professionals, and they look around at where we would lose employees to and why, and they brought those two entities in based on where we would lose employees, or who we compare with, who we compete with.
But we all know we can never compete with a municipality in county government.
Right. And if you'll notice the two words, some review, I don't know the amount of weight they're going to give to those entities, but they're given some consideration to them.
The next thing, I guess, for the manager that concerns me a little bit, you stated that at some date, late April, the consultant was going to come and present this to the Board of Commissioners.
Yes.
I have some concern about that because I just have some concern about that, if we could talk about that.
Certainly. The timing or the...
No.
Oh,
I would think there should be some digestion of what they show before it gets presented to the board.
and that will be in the preliminary, probably by April the 8th. Whatever they present to me, I will certainly, pass along to whoever else needs to review it.
Don't you have a committee within your staff, a committee that's working with this?
We had an initial staff that was designed to help choose the consultant group, but we haven't brought that staff back together since then. I don't know if that's something that Stacy would entertain.
That's something that seems like to me should be done, that it be presented to the staff before it comes to the Board of Commissioners.
That's my point.
Yeah, I thought all the time we had appointed a staff to look at updating, didn't we?
What's that, Mr. Belfield?
Didn't we ask them to put together a staff to work on this within the county? And then, of course, naturally, they got consultants.
We do have an
Yeah,
internal group.
so the consultants should be presenting that to that group.
I think that's what, you and I are saying the same thing, different ways.
Yeah.
I think it needs to go to the staff and that group prior to it being
Well,
put.
whoever they put together within the county employees to work on this should see it first.
Right. I agree with you 100% on that.
Okay? All right. Thank you, Anderson. We need a motion to adjourn?
I need a motion to recess.
No, we get to adjourn, because remember I told you we have a meeting dates already published for today and tomorrow?
I took what you said, opposite of what you.
No, I was just
Okay.
saying that why we weren't recessing.
Okay.
Because we're good.
But you said we need to recess.
No, I'm so sorry.
No, I probably heard it wrong. All right, since we finished up the work for today, I am told we can't adjourn because the meeting tomorrow is a published meeting date as well, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. Have a motion to adjourn, is there a second? Second? Madam Clerk, motion by Sue, second by Gwen. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign?